Leaving work early, I couldn't shake off a nagging feeling of dread. As I, Laura Bennett, a 28-year-old part-time marketing assistant, approached my home, the unease grew. My mind was racing, but I brushed off the anxiety as a side effect of not feeling well. Little did I know that my world was about to be turned upside down. Stepping into the silent house, I felt the atmosphere shift. The home I shared with my husband Daniel felt unfamiliar, almost hostile. Driven by an inexplicable instinct, I found myself tiptoeing towards the back room where muffled voices broke the eerie silence. My heart pounded against my chest, a sense of impending doom taking hold. I hesitated at the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. The voices became clearer, a man and a woman, intimately engaged in conversation. Pushing the door open just a crack, I peered inside. The sight that greeted me was like a punch to the gut. Daniel, my husband of 3 years, was entwined with a younger woman. Their laughter and affectionate whispers were a stark contrast to the coldness and distance that had crept into our marriage. I stood there, frozen, as Daniel's words sliced through the last threads of trust I had clung to. "Marrying Laura was a mistake," he said, his voice laced with contempt. "Young and beautiful is what I deserve. Isabel, you make me feel alive." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. This was not the time for weakness. I needed to be strong, to think clearly. Quietly, I closed the door and retreated, my mind racing with the betrayal I had just witnessed. It wasn't just the affair that hurt. It was the realization that the man I loved saw me as nothing more than a mistake. As I made my way to the living room, a plan began to take shape in my mind. I needed evidence, something concrete to expose them for what they were. It wasn't about revenge, it was about justice. No, who was I kidding? It was about both. I knew I had to be careful, to play my cards right. Daniel was a lawyer, cunning and persuasive. I couldn't confront him without solid proof, so I decided to gather evidence of his infidelity. It was time for me to step out of the shadows and take control of my life. In the days that followed, I became a silent observer in my own home, collecting pieces of their betrayal. Text messages, late-night calls, the subtle changes in Daniel's behavior, everything was a clue, a piece of the puzzle I was putting together. I was no longer the trusting, naive wife. I was a woman on a mission, a woman wronged, ready to strike back. As I lay in bed each night, planning my next move, I realized this was more than just about exposing Daniel and Isabel. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. I was ready to face the storm. I had to be. When Daniel and I first met, it felt like a scene out of a romantic movie. He was a charismatic lawyer, and I, a marketing assistant, found myself drawn to his confidence and charm. Our courtship was a whirlwind, filled with laughter, deep conversations, and promises of a future together. We married within a year, a decision that seemed right at the time, but now felt like a hasty mistake. Our married life began like a dream. Daniel was attentive, caring, and seemed genuinely interested in my life, but as the months passed, the facade began to crumble. He became more absorbed in his work, often returning late, and our conversations dwindled to mundane exchanges. One evening, as we sat in silence over dinner, I attempted to bridge the growing gap between us. "Daniel, we barely talk anymore. Is everything okay at work?" I asked, reaching for his hand. He withdrew his hand and replied coldly, "Work is fine, Laura. I'm just tired. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under." His words stung, creating a rift that only grew with time. As Daniel's detachment increased, so did my workload at home and the office. I tried to compensate for his absence by keeping the house perfect and excelling at my job, hoping it would bring back the man I fell in love with. Then came the day that marked the beginning of the end. Daniel, in a rare moment of candor, shared his thoughts on our marriage. "Laura, you know I love you, but I feel like you're not pulling your weight financially. I'm carrying the burden of our expenses, and it's not fair." His words felt like a slap. I had been contributing as much as I could from my part-time job, cutting back on personal expenses to support our household. "But Daniel, I've been trying my best. I'm already stretched thin between work and home," I protested. Daniel scoffed, "Your best isn't good enough. Maybe if you worked harder or got a better job, we wouldn't be in this situation." His dismissive attitude left me reeling. I thought of the late nights, the unending household chores, and the sacrifices I had made for our marriage. It was clear that my efforts and my love were not enough for him. That night, I lay awake, contemplating our relationship. The man I married, the man I thought would be my partner in life, had become a stranger. His words echoed in my head, a constant reminder of the growing void between us. The seeds of doubt and resentment took root, setting the stage for the inevitable confrontation that would change everything. The days following that conversation felt like walking through a minefield. Daniel's indifference towards me grew, and with it my sense of isolation. I started to dread his return home each evening, not knowing which version of him I'd face, the cold, distant husband, or the one who saw me as a financial burden. One particularly tense evening, Daniel arrived home earlier than usual. I greeted him with a cautious optimism, hoping for a semblance of the warmth we once shared. "You're home early, is everything okay?" I asked. Daniel's response was curt, his eyes void of any warmth. "I left early to talk about something important. We need to discuss our finances again." His tone was not inviting a conversation, but demanding a resolution. I felt a knot form in my stomach. "What about our finances?" I inquired, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about the mortgage, Laura. I'm not okay with shouldering most of the burden. You need to contribute more." His words were like daggers, undermining my efforts and sacrifices. I couldn't contain my frustration. "I'm already giving nearly all of my income towards the mortgage, Daniel. How much more do you expect me to contribute?" My voice was a mix of anger and desperation. Daniel leaned back, his expression one of annoyance. "That's not enough. You should consider increasing your work hours or finding a higher-paying job. Being cooped up at home isn't good for anyone." His suggestion hit me like a wave of ice-cold water. "Increase my work hours? I'm already struggling to balance my job with the housework you leave entirely to me." Daniel stood up, his demeanor turning hostile. "That's your job, Laura. I'm out working all day, earning for us. It's only fair you take care of the house, and frankly, you're not even doing a great job at that." I was stunned into silence. His words were not just hurtful. They were a complete dismissal of everything I had been doing for us, for our home. It was clear that in his eyes, I was failing at being a wife, a partner. As he walked away, leaving me standing there, a mix of hurt and anger bubbling inside me, I knew something had to change. I couldn't continue living like this, constantly demeaned and undervalued. The man I married was gone, replaced by this cold, unfeeling stranger. That night, as I lay in bed, the weight of his words crushing me, I realized that my marriage was not just strained, it was broken, and I was the only one trying to fix it. It was time to stop. It was time to start thinking about myself, about my worth. And most importantly, it was time to start planning my escape from this toxic relationship. The days blurred together in a haze of resentment and disbelief. Daniel's demands and coldness continued, each word chipping away at the last remnants of our marriage. Then, one fateful day, I stumbled upon a truth that would change everything. I arrived home from work, expecting the usual empty house, only to find Daniel's car in the driveway. Confused, I entered quietly, only to hear laughter from the living room, a sound so rare in our home nowadays. Peering around the corner, my heart stopped. There was Daniel, cozy and relaxed, with Isabel, the same woman I had seen him with that day. Suppressing the urge to confront them, I retreated to the kitchen, my mind racing. This was no casual visit. The intimacy between them was palpable, undeniable. And then it hit me. Isabel wasn't just a fling, she was a full-blown affair. Later that evening, after Isabel had left, I faced Daniel. "Who is Isabel, really?" "She seems more than just a friend," I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Daniel's reaction was swift and dismissive. "She's just a colleague. Don't make a big deal out of it, Laura." But I knew better. The way he avoided my gaze, the tension in his voice, it was all too clear. Daniel was lying, and I was done being the fool. That night, I lay in bed, my mind made up. I needed proof of his betrayal, something concrete to expose him and free myself from this sham of a marriage. My plan was simple, yet risky. I would record their encounters, gather evidence of the affair. Over the next few weeks, I became a shadow in my own home, watching, waiting. The opportunity came sooner than expected. One afternoon, I returned home to find them together again. This time, I was prepared. With my phone discreetly positioned, I recorded their intimate conversation, their plans, their betrayal. As I listened to the recording later, a mix of sorrow and rage washed over me. but there was also a sense of empowerment. I had the evidence I needed. It was time to act, to end this farce and reclaim my dignity. With each step of my plan, a sense of clarity and determination grew within me. This was not just about revenge, it was about justice. For too long I had been a spectator in my own life, but no more. I was ready to face Daniel and Isabel, to expose their deceit. It was time for them to face the consequences of their actions. Armed with the evidence of Daniel's infidelity, I felt a newfound strength. It was no longer about salvaging a broken marriage, it was about exposing the truth and getting justice. But first, I needed an ally, someone who would be as impacted by this revelation as I was. My opportunity came unexpectedly. While going through Daniel's phone one evening, I discovered that Isabel was not only married, but her husband, James, was a prominent client of Daniel's firm. This was more than just personal. It was a professional bombshell that would have far-reaching consequences. I contacted James, introducing myself as Daniel's wife, and requesting a meeting under the guise of discussing an urgent matter about our spouses. We met at a quiet cafe, away from prying eyes. The look on James's face when I revealed the affair was a mixture of shock, anger, and betrayal. James's reaction was visceral. "Isabel and your husband? This is unbelievable. How long has this been going on?" he demanded, his voice shaking with emotion. I shared the evidence, watching as his face contorted with pain and fury. I had my suspicions, but this is concrete proof. She's betrayed me, and with your husband, no less. The plan was set into motion. James would confront Isabel and I would confront Daniel, both of us armed with the undeniable truth. It was a risky move, but I was past caring. I wanted to see Daniel's facade crumble, to watch him face the consequences of his actions. The confrontation with Daniel was cathartic. I watched as his face turned pale, his usual confident demeanor crumbling under the weight of his exposed secrets. "Laura, this isn't what it looks like. We can talk about this," he stammered, his voice betraying his panic. "No, Daniel, there's nothing left to talk about. I know everything." "And so does James," I replied, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. The fallout was swift and devastating. James filed for divorce and cut all personal and professional ties with Daniel. Isabel's world came crashing down, and Daniel's career took a massive hit. But for me, it was a bittersweet victory. I had exposed them, but at the cost of my own marriage and the life I thought I had. As I watched Daniel's life unravel, I felt a sense of closure. It was a harsh lesson, but one that freed me from the chains of a loveless marriage. I was ready to move on, to rebuild my life on my terms. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the reality of my situation began to sink in. I watched as Daniel's meticulously constructed world fell apart. The man who once held himself with unshakable confidence was now a shadow of his former self, reeling from the impact of his own actions. The final blow came during a tense meeting at our lawyer's office to discuss the divorce proceedings. Daniel, looking defeated, tried to salvage what little he could from the ruins of his life. "Look, Laura, can't we sort this out amicably? Think about what you're doing here. This will ruin both our lives," Daniel pleaded, his voice laced with desperation. I looked at him, feeling a mixture of pity and revulsion. "Amicable? After what you did? You didn't think of our lives when you were with Isabel. It's too late for regrets, Daniel." Our lawyer, a stoic man, handed Daniel the divorce papers. "The terms are clear. Given the circumstances, there will be no alimony. You'll also need to agree on the division of assets." Daniel's face contorted in anger. "This is ridiculous. I earned most of this. She doesn't deserve half of my assets." I remained calm, my resolve unshaken. "I don't want your money, Daniel. I want my freedom. And you can keep your assets. I'm starting anew, far from the shadow of your deceit." The divorce was finalized swiftly. Daniel's career continued to spiral downward as the scandal became public knowledge. Isabel, on the other hand, faced her own set of consequences. Her marriage to James ended in a bitter divorce, and she was left to grapple with the social and professional fallout of her actions. As for me, I emerged from the chaos with a sense of liberation. I had lost my marriage, but I gained something far more valuable, my self-respect and independence. I sold the house, a place that once symbolized our shared dreams, and moved into a modest apartment, embracing my new beginning. My days were no longer filled with the dread of Daniel's return or the anguish of his betrayal. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life, rediscovering my passions, and reconnecting with old friends. The experience had changed me, but it also strengthened me. I realized that life often throws unexpected challenges our way, and how we respond to them defines us. I chose to stand up for myself, to fight back against betrayal and deceit, and in doing so, I found a resilience I never knew I had.
Hey, where are you right now? I'm not sure. Don't upset me. There's nothing belonging to us in the house. What's happening? Well, I packed up all my things and left, okay. I don't get it. Why would you leave? Well, we got divorced, so it's not odd for me to leave, right? Divorced? I'm the one who filed the divorce papers. What? My name is Claire. I'm 35 years old and work in an office. I'm married to Evan, and we've been together for 5 years. Evan used to work at a company, but he quit his job 2 years ago to start his own business. Unfortunately, his business hasn't been doing well, and we've been struggling financially for the past 2 years. Luckily, I have a good income, so we're able to make ends meet. Our relationship as a couple is okay, not great, but not terrible either. However, I have a big problem with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law who live in my husband's family home. Every time I see them, they make fun of how I look and always find something to complain about. It really upsets me and makes me feel stressed out. My in-laws' house is only a 10-minute drive from our apartment, so my husband often wants to visit them. When we first got married, I went along with it to please my husband, but lately I've started to stand up for myself because their behavior has become too much to handle. Even when I try to stand up for myself, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law don't stop. They always find ways to ask me for money. Hey Claire, I need $500 to buy a birthday present for a friend. Can you give it to me? $500? What are you buying? I'm planning to gift a trip, and I'll be going too. No, that sounds odd. It's like I'm footing the bill, and I can't afford to give $500. You're so tight-fisted, Claire. Are you a miser? Even though Evan supports you. Excuse me? I'm the one supporting him. My husband hasn't contributed anything to our living expenses in the past year, and you, sister-in-law, should get a job. It's not okay to be unemployed at your age. Why does my mother-in-law accept my sister-in-law's unemployment? I wanted to say all of this, but my husband interrupted. Hey Claire, I have a friend's birthday coming up. I want to buy a present, so could you give me $500? You really understand, Evan. You're a good son. Then can I also get about $300? I need it for something. I wasn't sure. It's okay, Claire. You should have about $300 in your wallet, right? Come on, give it to her quickly. My husband, maybe out of pride, made me give the money to my sister-in-law without hesitation. And then he started saying confusing things like, thanks to me, we can live this luxurious life. I couldn't understand why my husband was acting this way lately. During the car ride home, I confronted him. Why do you act like this? I have my pride as the eldest son. He started saying even more confusing things. This led to a big argument. Once you give them money, they become bossy. What's wrong with making my own mother happy? We can't afford to live that lavishly, you know. Do you get it? You're not contributing anything to our living expenses. So what? We got a big bonus this summer. Don't rely on that. That money is for savings. Since then, my husband and I have been constantly fighting. How can he act so arrogantly when we're struggling financially? Why does he always have to be in a position of power over me? His flaws are becoming more and more apparent. I realized I didn't have to put up with things I didn't like just for him. So when he recently said, "We're going to my mom's," I responded, "You go by yourself." My husband tried to argue, saying, "What do you mean? It's normal for the wife to come too." But when I pointed out, "So you're abnormal because you don't come when we go to my parents' house," he got annoyed and said, "Do whatever you want," then went to his parents' house alone. A weekend without my mother-in-law and sister-in-law was such a relief. It felt so comfortable and nice. With some free time to myself, I focused on working towards my dream, and that dream is to buy my own home. I spent time researching online and ordering brochures. My dreams and aspirations were growing, and just thinking about my new house made me excited. As I looked at different furniture options online, I imagined carefully arranging them in my future home. Lost in these thoughts, Time passed quickly, and before I knew it, evening had arrived and my husband was back. Oh, welcome home. Oh, is he still upset? How childish. He should act more mature as a grown man. I wasn't trying to cater to my husband, so I continued making dinner without speaking to him. Then out of nowhere, my husband spoke up. You've been quite bold lately, huh? Standing up to me and saying you don't want to see my mother and the others. Defying, we're equals in this relationship. Besides, your mother and the others always criticize me, so I don't want to visit your parents' house anymore. That's what I mean by being bold. Normally, wives are expected to obey their husbands. If you say I can't do that, you're talking about divorce, right? Divorce? Are you surprised that I wouldn't mind being divorced by you? But I'm really upset with you. I've already prepared my part of the paperwork so it can be submitted anytime. I'll let it go this time, but if you defy me again, it'll be an instant divorce. Think about that. With that, my husband smirked and ordered, I'm going to take a bath. Hurry up and make dinner. Once I confirmed he was in the bath, I couldn't help but feel relieved. Yes, now I can end things with that man whenever I want. I cooked dinner happily. From then on, I worked hard to save money. I was almost ready to make the down payment. It was difficult to contain my excitement and keep from smiling. But in front of my husband, I acted calm. Finally, I bought a house in my own name. All that's left is to get a divorce after the house is ready and leave the home I share with my husband. I started packing my belongings little by little without my husband noticing and sent them to my parents' house temporarily. I had told my parents everything, and they understood my situation. Finally, the house was finished. When my husband went to his parents' house as usual on the weekend, I moved all my things to my new home. The new house is very comfortable, and both the inside and outside are just as I imagined. As I enjoyed the pleasant scent of a new home all day, my husband called me that night. Hey, where are you? Well, where do you think I am? Don't play games with me. There's nothing left in the house. What's happening? Well, I packed up all my stuff and left. What? I don't understand. Why would you do that? Well, since we're divorced now, it's not unusual for me to move out, is it? Huh? Divorced? I already filed the divorce papers. What? We're not together anymore. Don't try to fool me. I won't accept that. But you were the one who said we could get divorced whenever. As a businessman, you should stand by your words. Anyway, this is the end for us. With that, I hung up the phone. Finally, I was free from my husband. That night, I slept peacefully. Living in my new home was so comfortable, and every morning, I woke up feeling refreshed. Today, I decided to invite my parents over to my new home for the first time. As I was cooking alone in the kitchen, my parents arrived with a bottle of celebratory sake. They were both surprised and impressed by my new home, and then the three of us raised our glasses for a toast. Even though it was a bit early, we started celebrating. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Huh? Who could it be at this hour? When I checked the intercom, I saw my ex-husband, ex-mother-in-law, and ex-sister-in-law standing there. Why are you here? From now on, my parents and I will be living here. My father is in the hospital right now, but when he's discharged, he'll also be living here. Please leave immediately. No way, that's absurd. Why should I do that? Please leave my property right now. Then my ex-mother-in-law stepped forward. You cheeky girl, listen. What's yours is mine. If you understand, open the door. What are you talking about? I'm single now. Huh? Didn't your son tell you? We've already filed for divorce. We're strangers now. Upon hearing this, my ex-mother-in-law and ex-sister-in-law looked at my ex-husband. He seemed to be explaining something to them, although I couldn't see clearly on the intercom screen. He was probably saying something like, I don't accept this. I told them anyway, you can't enter this house. Please leave, and hung up the intercom. As my ex-husband continued shouting at the front door, demanding to talk, I was at a loss for what to do to make him leave. Then, to my surprise, a police car pulled up in front of my house, and they took my ex-husband into custody. From inside, I could hear my ex-husband protesting and struggling as the police pinned him to the ground. It hurts. Why is this happening to me? Meanwhile, my ex-mother-in-law and ex-sister-in-law stood there in shock upon learning that their son was divorced. They weren't arrested, but they were escorted away in the police car. After watching my ex-husband and his family being taken away, I returned inside the house, wondering who had called the cops. Then, to my surprise, my father made a peace sign. In situations like this, you call the police immediately. Trust your always calm dad. We continued our party with another round of drinks. As for how my ex-husband found out where I live, it turns out he followed me home from work because he admitted to stalking me. If he shows up again, he'll be arrested on the spot. With his timid personality, it's unlikely that he'll come near this house again. I also obtained a restraining order against his family. After the incident, it seems my ex-husband's business went downhill, and he accrued a lot of debt. With the divorce, the financial support he and his family were relying on from me was cut off. Additionally, with his father in the hospital, they had no source of income, so they had to sell their house. It's a case of reaping what they sowed. On the other hand, I invited my parents to live with me in my new home. They're very happy, calling me incredibly filial, and they're enjoying life in our new home. I want to continue cherishing my parents and live happily as a close-knit family. With his timid personality, it's unlikely that he'll come near this house again. I also obtained a restraining order against his family. After the incident, it seems my ex-husband's business went downhill, and he accrued a lot of debt. With the divorce, the financial support he and his family were relying on from me was cut off. Additionally, with his father in the hospital, they had no source of income, so they had to sell their house. It's a case of reaping what they sowed. On the other hand, I invited my parents to live with me in my new home. They're very happy, calling me incredibly filial, and they're enjoying life in our new home. I want to continue cherishing my parents and live happily as a close-knit family. They were like strange creatures I'd never seen before. They congratulated me on marrying my brother. They said my dress was nice, but then one of them suggested that hers looked better. I felt like saying that might hurt the bride's feelings. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. In the room where the bride was getting ready, I was surprised by my sister-in-law and mother-in-law. They made rude comments with a sassy attitude. I couldn't believe how they talked down to me, and my sister-in-law's outfit was outrageous. Her dress was so white it could have been mistaken for a wedding dress, and it showed off her thighs through a slit. She even had fur wrapped around her off-shoulder design. My mother-in-law looked at her daughter with so much love. Meanwhile, my husband looked at them with a cold expression. I never thought I'd experience such bullying on my wedding day. It was too much to handle. Looking back, it's no wonder my sister-in-law's attempts at matchmaking never worked out, considering how she behaved even at someone else's wedding. My name is Anaya. I was born in a coastal town and grew up in a normal family. When I went to a state university, I stayed with my grandma, who lived nearby. Living with her, someone who always cared for me, was my dream. Her cozy old house blended Western and ethnic styles, giving it a nostalgic feel that I adored. Even after finding a job, I chose to stay there, enjoying moments on the balcony, chatting with grandma, and snacking on seasonal fruit. When grandma got sick, I took over caring for the house, hoping she'd recover, but sadly that wish never came true. As grandma's health declined, she moved to a facility in our hometown. I want to look after grandma, I insisted, but she smiled and told me, "You've done more than enough. I want you, Anaya, to find happiness." After grandma passed away, I married Jesse, who had always been there for me. Now we live in a house filled with memories of grandma, but our peaceful newlywed life is often disrupted by two troublesome women. How did someone like you, with such an ordinary face and slim figure, end up marrying my brother? One day, my mother-in-law asked me to make lunch for my sister-in-law, who had a meeting with the neighborhood association. Instead of thanks, my sister-in-law greeted me with sarcasm. I just wanted to leave, but if I did, they'd likely follow me home. Satisfied with her own conclusion, sister-in-law said, "Ask your brother." "Well, maybe you two are a good match since he's not that great either." Then she quickly ate the curry I made. I think she believes that eating slowly in front of men makes her more attractive. My sister-in-law might seem mischievous, but what's really scary is her lack of consideration for others. She looks down on everyone, including me and her own brother, without a second thought. It's really tiring. And dealing with her mother, who raised her, is even more challenging. Instead of simply disliking me, my mother-in-law seems more focused on boosting her daughter up by putting me down and giving me orders. That's why she always asks me to do things. If I don't pay attention to her daughter, She'll either keep calling me or show up at my door nonstop. It's like a never-ending nightmare. Mother-in-law always made it clear that her daughter was her top priority and didn't seem to care much about her son, my husband. He insists he wasn't mistreated, but he also says he never felt valued. His father left for a work assignment 10 years ago and never came back, even after retiring. Despite this, he still sends money for their living expenses, so it seems neither mother-in-law nor sister-in-law care much about him. My husband tries to talk to them about their behavior, but they ignore him. To them, he's just another person to look down on. It broke my heart to see my husband suffer more than me, and I often gave in to mother-in-law's demands, which was a mistake. The two of them became increasingly difficult to bear, and as a couple, we grew exhausted. We couldn't continue like this. So determined my husband and I decided to come up with a plan. Just when we were almost ready, mother-in-law and sister-in-law unexpectedly came to our house. It was a hot summer day, and my husband was at work. With reluctance, I greeted them. "Hello, sister-in-law. What brings you here?" Just because we're your cute sister-in-law and mother-in-law doesn't mean we need a reason to visit. You need to work on that stingy attitude. It's hot outside. Let us in. You're so thoughtless, sister-in-law snapped. I really didn't want to welcome them into Grandma's cherished house, but to avoid making a scene, I reluctantly let them in. I served them coffee and some cookies I had baked the day before. "What? No cake?" Sister-in-law complained. "I'm sorry we came unannounced." "Well, it's fine. Your cooking is all right, even if it's a bit simple," mother-in-law added. "That's true. We'll give you that," sister-in-law agreed. Strangely, their compliments felt more eerie than nice. "The house is old but roomy. It's decent," mother-in-law remarked. "To me, this house is just right," sister-in-law added. "Elle is getting married," mother-in-law suddenly dropped the bombshell. Wait, this self-centered sister-in-law. I was briefly shocked, but her getting married wasn't all that surprising. She often boasted about her shapely figure and her direct approach with men. It seemed to work on gullible men or those seeking casual relationships. "So, is it with the guy you had an affair with?" I remembered a man she had mentioned before. "It wasn't an affair, we just met in the wrong order. It's true love, but no, not him," she brushed off. "The one who recently approached you?" I just noticed his intense gaze and made the first move, but no, not him either. I met him at a speed dating event. He's the son of a wealthy man, mother-in-law proudly announced. "That's right, I'm having a shotgun wedding with a rich guy." "Good for Elle, unlike your brother who married someone like you," she added, taking a jab at me. "I'm already pregnant," she continued, driving her point home. The speed dating event was about 3 months ago. She probably charmed an unsuspecting man. "I feel sorry for him and his family," mother-in-law commented. "Did you end things with the other guys?" I asked. "Not yet. They all adore me so much, I can't bring myself to break it off. It's bound to happen eventually. Elle is just so charming." "But what truly makes Elle happy is money," sister-in-law explained. I had a feeling, but I still wondered if the child was really fathered by that wealthy man. "We want to use this house for a pre-wedding family gathering." Their hidden agenda became clear. I was so disgusted that I blurted out my response, "Absolutely not." They glared at me, and to avoid a confrontation, I quickly tried to smooth things over. I didn't want to make a scene, so I scrambled to find the right words. I think a groom's family would prefer to see their future daughter-in-law's actual home, but our place is a bit messy, and it's just a small apartment." "Then tidy up and stop smoking indoors," sister-in-law snapped back. "But won't it seem odd if they're invited to the bride's brother's place?" I expressed my worry. "You're not understanding. We'll just say this is Elle's family home. What if they find out the truth? As long as you and your husband keep quiet, it'll be fine. You're getting married, so pretending just for the introduction won't fix anything. Once we're married, he's mine, and besides, I'm pregnant," sister-in-law asserted. "It's not that simple. You're so thoughtful to be concerned. But why not just make this house truly belong to Mom and Dad?" Sister-in-law's absurd suggestions left me speechless. "Oh, come on. What a terrible idea. This house belongs to my grandma. It's not just up to me," I objected. "Don't you understand? Once you're married, everything belongs to the husband's family. It's a common rule," sister-in-law argued. "Well, you better get used to it. What's yours is now ours. So next Sunday, we'll bring the fiance and his family over. And make sure to prepare a fancy and cute meal, of course. We'll pretend Elle made it and even change the curtains to match Elle's teeth, mother-in-law chimed in. We're relying on you, sister-in-law, they said before leaving, imposing their wishes and convenience on me. All that was left was my boiling anger and a stack of dirty dishes. I'm sorry, we won't let them use it, my husband said that night, his heart heavy after hearing the news. Of course not, but even if we say no, they'll just force their way in. Maybe we should accelerate our plan. I could handle their mistreatment of me, but I won't stand for them disrespecting Grandma's house. We'll make them pay for all the bullying, so be prepared, I declared. The next day, I made several calls. Despite the sudden change of plans, everyone was understanding. I was truly thankful. Once everything was arranged, I called mother-in-law. Mother-in-law, I want to make sure Elle's wedding is perfect. Can we have a bit more time? We're planning to renovate to make it just right for the couple, I proposed. Anaya, I misjudged you. You're truly kind-hearted. But we need to get going with the wedding preparations, so please hurry, she replied. I understand. We'll be ready in 3 weeks. Why don't you start searching for a wedding venue? I suggested. You're very considerate. It's almost surprising. But yes, we'll leave the introduction to you and focus on the wedding, she agreed. Was this our first pleasant conversation and perhaps our last? Those two won't suspect a thing, and they won't set foot in this house until the day of the wedding. Okay, we're going to be really busy starting today, my husband said. We had a very close deadline. We would work really hard without much rest, but it was all for our future. 3 weeks later, the day my mother-in-law had set for meeting us arrived. My husband and I were nervous, waiting for her phone call. I could almost imagine my mother-in-law's angry face as she called. At 10 o'clock a.m., my phone rang, showing my mother-in-law's name. I answered the call. Anaya, what did you do? My mother-in-law's voice sounded very upset. I thought you'd like it. I made a perfect meal for you and Elle, I replied. What did you do? She asked again, her voice getting louder and more panicked. But her words were hard to understand. The place she brought her fiance's family to, pretending it was her home, wasn't Grandma's house anymore. I had prepared a new home and meal for them, but it seems they weren't happy about it. Mother-in-law's words were still hard to understand. She probably wanted me to explain everything to the other side. I'll do that. I'm sorry if I made you upset. Can you put me on speaker so the groom's mother can hear? I asked. The shouting stopped and a calm woman's voice came through. Are you Aaron's mother? It seems there's been a mix-up. Oh wait, not Aaron, sorry, she corrected herself. So Aaron finally left his wife for Elle, or is it Ivan Phil? I listed all the men my sister-in-law had been involved with. Anaya, stop it. Mother-in-law screamed, louder than before. The call ended. They were probably in the middle of a big argument. Ah, that felt satisfying. Anaya, my husband, who had listened to the whole conversation, looked at me with apology in his eyes. I'm sorry for making you do that. I should have handled it, he said, sounding regretful. No, remember I said I wanted to get back at them one last time for Grandma's beloved house. Come on, I've explained this. Grandma wanted me to be happy. I love that house, but you're more important to me than it. My mother, Grandma's heir, had planned to demolish the house, turning it into vacant land. It was earthquake resistant, but keeping up an old house is hard. I had been insisting on living there because of my love for it, but after marrying my husband and dealing with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I changed my mind. I didn't want them to ruin that house, but I didn't want to leave my husband either, so I wanted to say goodbye to Grandma's house with good memories. That's why I asked my husband to find a new job, and we prepared to move back to my hometown. We just sped up our plans. I had Grandma's house demolished and built a small dog house in the middle of the empty land with a tag that says L. It looked like a cozy log cabin, but it cost us a bit more than we planned. I even got some fancy dog food from the pet store. Everything was set. Grandma liked you. She wouldn't want us to break up because of that house, Anaya. I promise I won't waste the chance you've given me, my husband said, looking at me with sincerity. I trusted him when he made that decision. It's been 1.5 years since then. After we moved to my hometown, my husband, who was a bit unsure at first about the fishermen in the neighborhood, has become even more popular with them than I am. He seems to really enjoy the coastal town's breeze and all the seafood dishes. His once pale skin now has some color to it. Seeing him happily eating grilled salmon for dinner makes me really happy, I told him. Did you check your emails today? My husband asked. No, nothing new. They're probably busy. We haven't talked to my mother-in-law and sister-in-law since that whole thing happened. My husband's phone is the only way we could reach them, I said. We found out about the doghouse situation from a neighbor who was friends with Grandma. The house my mother-in-law and sister-in-law showed Grandma was torn down, and now there's just a doghouse there. And from the dog food bowl, there's a fancy smell of perfume, I added. The two were really upset, saying it was all because of my brother's wife. When the Fiances family got a hint over the phone about my sister-in-law's bad taste in men, they confronted them. They got really nervous and couldn't give a clear answer. Later, the Fiances' parents hired a detective to check on my sister-in-law's behavior, but they found nothing except lies and a lot of boyfriends. This made them do a DNA test on the unborn baby, and they found out it wasn't the rich man's. So the engagement was called off. The real father of the baby turned out to be one of the men my sister-in-law was seeing. He was happy to have a child with her, and they got married. But his mom was angry that her son was with an older woman she didn't like, so she insisted they all live together. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law was mad that her daughter was taken away, so she rented an apartment near the newlyweds and they fought a lot. My sister-in-law, who wanted to marry rich and have an easy life, now looks tired from dealing with her mother-in-law and doing housework and taking care of the baby. But the good part is, her husband really loves the baby, so they're managing on their own. My husband's phone rings. Oh, it's an invitation for drinks from my father-in-law. Your dad really likes you, I mentioned. I like hearing his stories, and my mother-in-law always makes my favorite food. I see now that my own mom never cared to know what I liked. This is what having a family feels like, my husband whispered. Don't worry, you'll be the kind of parent who knows all their child's favorites, I comforted him. As I said this, I gently rubbed my growing belly, and he smiled warmly. I feel like we can make that happen in this house, he said, looking at the caramel-colored beam on the ceiling. It's a special beam we kept from Grandma's house when we tore it down. We put it in our new home as a reminder of Grandma. It was my husband's idea to keep the beam, even when I wanted to start fresh. That's why I chose to build our future with him. Let's make this house just as wonderful as Grandma's, I declared. Yes, definitely, my husband agreed. In this peaceful coastal town where you can hear the waves, our little house stands. This is where we'll create our happiness. Hey, where are you right now? I've been sleeping at home. There's no sign of my husband at our home where I am now. He's lying to me. Let's go back to when I was pregnant with our first child. My name is Ashley. I was finally expecting our first child in our second year of marriage. Just 1 month to go until my due date. I'm 9 months pregnant. While I'm excited about the birth, I can easily imagine the confusion of going through childbirth and child rearing for the first time. I had planned to go back to my parents' house this weekend to have them help me out for a while. I mentioned the idea of going back home to my husband during the stable period of my pregnancy, but I thought he had probably forgotten, so I brought it up again today. While I was relaxing and watching TV, my husband casually mentioned, "Heading back to your parents? Oh yeah, you mentioned that. If you're going, just go. I can handle things here just fine without you." I was shocked by his dismissive tone, but I didn't want to argue, so I decided not to argue back. Well, I'll be going back this weekend. Our baby is due next month, and I plan to stay there for a month or two after giving birth. So I'll probably be back in about 3 months. Please make sure the baby's room is clean and ready. Okay. I would have done it anyway. Oh, and I can't see you off this weekend because I have to work. Oh, all right. I had hoped he would at least come with me to the station, but that hope faded fast. I knew he was always busy with work, even on weekends. But I wish he would think about how hard it will be for me, heavily pregnant and with lots of luggage, to manage on the train. I understand he's busy, but I do feel lonely sometimes. I don't want our soon-to-be-born baby to feel lonely either. Plus, I'm worried about whether we can raise our child together like this. When did he become so distant? With these mixed feelings, I started packing. Since I still had time before going to my parents' house, I decided to send most of my luggage through a delivery service. I had already cleaned the house from top to bottom when I started my maternity leave early. They say pregnant women have a nesting instinct, I had set up a crib and prepared a space for the baby, excited to start our new life as a family of 3. When I returned after 2.5 months, I found that my husband was being really messy despite my efforts to clean up before leaving. Maybe I cleaned too early, but still he seemed to have forgotten how to live in a tidy home. He'd leave half-empty drink bottles lying around and ignore the cardboard boxes from his online shopping. I realized that I'd never seen him cook or clean since we got married. Even though I kept trying to tidy up, things only got messier, and I started worrying about the state of the house while I was away. But with the baby coming soon, I had to focus on preparing for childbirth. The weekend came quickly, and I went to my parents' home. Meanwhile, my husband didn't even see me off to work. While I relaxed at my parents' place, I stayed in touch with him through emails every day and called him about every 3 days. But gradually, he started ignoring my calls more often. When I managed to get through to him, I noticed he'd been avoiding my calls lately. I asked, "You've been hard to reach lately, are you busy?" But his answers were vague, like sort of or not really. Then I asked him nervously, "You're not cheating on me, are you?" I've heard some men do that when their wives are pregnant. He sounded annoyed and denied it, saying, "No, why would I do that?" It's frustrating to be accused. Feeling uneasy, I quickly apologized. Having these worries while carrying our precious baby wasn't good for my mental health. I needed to trust my husband, I decided. A few weeks later, I started having labor pains. As I prepared to go to the hospital, I called my husband. I felt embarrassed to show how much pain I was in, but I really wanted him there when our baby was born. I thought surely he'd be touched by the birth of our child. I'm in labor. It usually takes about half a day for the first baby to arrive, so if you leave now, you should make it in time. I really want you here when the baby is born. You can even cut the umbilical cord. When I asked him to come, my husband sighed in annoyance. "What? You want me to come by train right now?" "Sorry, I'm tired too, I can't. I have work tomorrow." I was shocked. "Are you still talking about work at a time like this? Our baby is being born. Isn't our child more important than work?" He snapped back, "Stop it. My job can't be replaced. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, I know. But my work is crucial. If I don't do it, it won't get done. Can't you understand? I have to go, I'm busy," and he hung up. I tried to convince him, but he wouldn't listen. As I sobbed through the pain of labor, I wondered why he was so indifferent to our child's birth. From the moment I found out I was pregnant, my child became my priority. But as a father, he seemed so distant, so I faced childbirth alone. The pain lasted a whole day, and the next day, a beautiful baby boy was born. The baby was so tiny, adorable, and dearly loved. After leaving the hospital, my parents doted on him, teaching me all sorts of things about taking care of him. Within a month, I had gotten pretty good at giving him baths. My parents worried about me, though. "Are you sure you're okay with your husband? We can't help but worry about you when we leave." But not wanting to trouble them, I reassured them, saying, "I think I'll manage somehow. My health is improving faster than I thought. I might go back home next week," I told them. "Really, don't overdo it. Let us know if anything happens," they replied. People often say that recovering from childbirth is like recovering from a car accident, but thanks to hormones, I was in good spirits and my body was healing well. I was also getting the hang of taking care of the baby, so I decided to go back home a bit earlier than planned. While I stayed with my parents, my husband hardly reached out, and even when I sent him photos and videos of our son, he didn't seem interested. I figured maybe the feeling of being a parent really kicks in when you're actively involved in raising the baby, and perhaps he wouldn't feel like a father until he spent time with our son. That's what I hoped, at least. It kept me going. I decided to surprise my husband by having my parents drop me off at home. I didn't tell him I was coming, but he should have been home since it was his day off. I wondered how he'd react when he saw our baby for the first time. Would our baby like our home? After a few hours' drive, we got home. I held our son while my parents brought in our luggage, and I unlocked the door. But when we walked in, the house was dark and silent. "We're back a bit earlier than expected, but we're home now." "Huh, no one's here. What's that smell?" As we stepped into the living room, a terrible odor hit us. When we turned on the light, we couldn't believe what we saw. The room was a mess, like a garbage dump. Dirty dishes and half-eaten food cluttered the sink. Clothes and trash were strewn all over. And there was even moldy juice sitting out, stinking up the place. The table was covered in stains and grime. The bathroom was also filthy, with black mold in the shower and sink, and the toilet was dirty and smelly. And worst of all, the crib we had prepared for our son was filled with unused cardboard boxes and trash bags. I had asked them to keep the house clean for our baby, but this was the opposite, and I was shocked. There's no way we can live in such a dirty house, and I'm especially upset about the crib being ruined. Seriously, what's going on here? There was no way we could raise a baby in a place like this. My parents were furious and searched for my husband, checking every room, but he was nowhere to be found. Where could he be on his day off? Was he working another weekend shift? But we couldn't even confirm if he had been working those shifts before. He wasn't paid extra for weekend work, and his company followed the regular work schedule. I had been suspicious of his disappearing acts on weekends. Let's try calling him, I suggested. Unable to bear being in the messy room any longer, I ushered my confused parents outside and dialed my husband's number. But he didn't pick up. Finally, after the third attempt, he answered. "Hey, where are you?" I asked. "I'm at home," he replied. "Why?" "Just at home," he repeated. We had searched the entire house, but there was no sign of my husband. Could he possibly be buried under all this trash? But we couldn't sense anyone there, and his voice didn't sound like he had just woken up. Then I heard a woman's voice on the phone. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it was definitely a woman's voice. That's when it hit me. He's cheating on me. I can't believe he'd do this while neglecting our child. The house was a disaster while we were away, and he was cheating on me. I was furious. A father like him isn't needed for our son. I'm done with a husband like this. If he prefers that other woman, then he can have her. How can you live in such a filthy and foul-smelling house? Oh, I understand. Maybe a burglar broke in. I need to call the police. What? But you're at your parents' house, right? What are you saying? Suddenly, my anger boiled over at my husband's evasiveness, and I raised my voice. You're the one lying about being at home, aren't you? Stop pretending. It's completely unacceptable to let the crib turn into a mess. I'm not returning to this house. We're getting a divorce. I ended the call abruptly and quickly reported to the police about the supposed burglary, intending to confront my husband. I instructed my parents and son to head back to my parents' house and waited for my husband in front of our home. The police arrived before my husband did. I welcomed them into the house as if they were guests, and soon after, I spotted my husband approaching, accompanied by another woman. As my husband came closer, his expression seemed to say, "This is bad." I confronted him, saying, "Hey, you weren't supposed to be back until next month." "But who is she?" The woman next to him glared at me, her arms crossed. "And who are you, for that matter?" she retorted. Despite encountering his mistress, I strangely felt calm. I decided to question the woman. It turned out my husband had been meeting her without revealing he was married. I was so disgusted with him that I didn't know how to react anymore. "Hey, at least let me explain," my husband pleaded, trying to grab my shoulder, but I slapped his hand away, not wanting him to touch me. "Don't touch me. It's disgusting. The police are checking the room right now. I hope you're embarrassed having them see the mess you've made. I'm leaving now. You can explain to the police. Goodbye." Leaving them stunned, I went back to my parents' house, ignoring the numerous calls from my husband. That night, I finally decided to respond. It seemed he had explained the situation to the police, and he returned home looking troubled. It must have been embarrassing for him to see the police struggling in the messy room, but he brought it upon himself. After being rejected by the woman he had been deceiving, all that was left for him was shame and a wrecked house. "Please, I'm sorry. Come back. I've been looking forward to seeing our son," he pleaded. If he truly felt sorry, he should have come to my parents' house at least. Thinking he could apologize over the phone, and everything would be fine shows what kind of person he is. I can't imagine a future with him. Even though you never showed any interest before, you suddenly care? You weren't even there when I gave birth, despite me asking you to come several times, I pointed out. "Well, I thought you knew that I would. I'll clean up the room. I can't do household chores without you. I need you," he pleaded. I could imagine my husband growing more desperate and flustered on the other end of the line as I continued to reject him. "No matter how much you beg, it's not happening. You should have stuck with that woman. If you can't handle housework, have her do it for you," I responded firmly. But that was just a fling. It was a momentary lapse. You're the only one for me, Ashley, he insisted. A fling? Weren't you seeing her every time you said you had to work overtime? I countered. Well, that's a different. He trailed off, unable to explain himself. I pressed my husband, who was mumbling incoherently, and he confessed that he had been cheating on me with multiple women from his high school that he had reconnected with at a friend's wedding party. He's a scumbag either way. There's no point in talking, I thought to myself as I listened to him desperately apologizing, his voice close to tears. I can't believe it. You disgust me. Were you planning to touch our son with those hands? Unthinkable, I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. I won't do it again. I'll come to pick you up right now. I want to see you and our son. I'll prove my sincerity. Let's go home together, he pleaded. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from his defiant voice. What was he thinking at this point? I can't trust you. There's nothing more to talk about. I'll raise our son on my own, I declared firmly. Ashley, please forgive. He began, but I hung up before I could hear the rest of his words. The sound of the call ending echoed emptily in my ear, and that marked the end of our short marital life. Half a year has passed since then, and I've decided to start working, relying on my parents for support. Once I've saved up enough money, I intend to leave my parents' house and start living on my own with my son. I'm in the midst of divorce negotiations with my husband, mainly for the sake of alimony. Despite his limited experience living alone, my husband is apparently unable to manage household chores, and most of his meals are from dining out, leaving his house in disarray. However, that's no longer my concern. I will do my best, showering my son with abundant love and care. When Walter and I visited my husband's parents, his mom came to pick us up from the airport. She said I couldn't ride in the car, so I had to walk home. I felt really upset about this, especially because it's a long 3-hour walk, even though I'm strong. I was almost in tears, but thankfully someone helped me out. In the end, it was my mother-in-law who felt sorry for what she did. My name is Jennifer, and I'm 30 years old. I met my husband, Walter, when we were both in college. We love mountain climbing. Walter is 2 years younger than me, and he's really good-looking and popular. When he asked me out, I couldn't believe it, but he says he likes how I tackle challenges without complaining. Walter has a good job at a big company and earns a lot of money. We've been happily married since college, but there's something that bothers me. During dinner, Walter always gets calls from his mom and leaves to talk to her in his room. Walter's mom calls him often, about once every 2 days. She really loves her son, and Walter is very sweet to her, which makes me wonder if he's too attached to his mom. But since she raised him well, I feel like I should respect her too. However, it seems like our feelings toward each other are different. It started before we got married when we went to visit my husband's parents. Walter's mom didn't seem happy when she found out I'm 2 years older than him and almost 30. She seemed unhappy throughout our visit, but Walter's dad didn't mind. He said age doesn't matter and that I seem like a reliable person who's perfect for Walter, who has his weaker moments. But that made Walter's mom even more upset. Walter's mom didn't want to argue with his dad directly, so she decided to make things difficult for me without him noticing. Sometimes she'd say things like, "Oh dear, I'm sorry, Jennifer, but the snacks I gave you are bad. Let me get you something else." When she was being mean on purpose, she'd widen her eyes, snort, and twist her lips. I felt like I was studying her behavior like a scientist studying animals. "It's all right, I can eat it." I smiled and cut off the spoiled part of the dried fruit and ate the rest. Back from my mountain club days, I learned to make do with whatever food was available. Walter's dad and Walter himself chuckled, saying, "That's just like Jennifer," and we all laughed. But then Walter's dad told his mom not to serve me something like that again. And the mood stayed light, but I wasn't paying enough attention. "I'm sorry," I said, still laughing, but I caught her quick, sharp glance and heard her tongue click disapprovingly. There were other times, like when she showed off souvenirs from Italy. She gave Walter a nice tie, but for me, it was a cheap t-shirt with a fake logo. "Come on, try on the tie, Jennifer. You too, try on the shirt," she said, with that same expression on her face. I realized it was another jab at me. No thanks. I don't wear ties with casual clothes, and I'm not feeling like trying on a shirt right now, I said, trying to keep the mood light with a smile, but inside, I was really frustrated. After that, I only use that t-shirt for things like gardening in the summer or as a funny prop in photos with my friends. I couldn't stand even looking at it. These little mean acts were subtle, so only I could really tell what was going on. When I tried talking to Walter about it, he'd just brush it off, saying, "Mom's a bit odd, forgive her." But the constant negativity was wearing me down. We live about an hour's drive from my in-laws, so it was always hanging over us that we could visit them whenever. That thought made me feel down. Then, out of the blue, Walter told me, "Jennifer, I've got some sudden news. I'm being transferred. It starts next month, so get ready." Walter was being moved for work. He said sorry, but secretly I felt relieved. It gave us a reason to keep our distance from my in-laws. "Okay, don't worry. I'll handle the preparations. I'll even ask my family for help." I happily went ahead with the moving preparations. Finally, I thought I could escape from my mother-in-law's constant teasing. Although I was nervous about starting a new life, most of my excitement came from the thought of getting away from her. Once the move was done, I hoped I could put some distance between us, but then the phone rang. It was my mother-in-law, asking where I'd been and hinting that I might be ignoring her son to spend time with my own parents. I wanted to let out a big sigh, but I stayed calm and explained that I was just busy at the store and wanted to make sure Walter had good meals in our new home. Her calls started coming more often, every 2 days. Even though we were seeing each other less, we were talking more. But most of the time, it was just her making little digs at me. She'd say things like, "My son is sensitive." I wonder if someone as tough as Jennifer can understand him. His high school girlfriend was so delicate, but now his tastes have changed, haven't they? It was always stuff meant to make me feel uncomfortable. It seems like Walter's mom doesn't have another way to deal with her stress. And unfortunately, I became the target for it. It felt like I was just a dumping ground for her frustrations. What hurt the most were her comments about having children. She'd say things like, "Jennifer, you're already 30. Can you even have a normal child being older than my son?" It was shocking to hear such outdated and hurtful remarks, especially since I'd been worrying about that myself lately. I couldn't help but cry after hanging up the phone. I wondered what she really thought of me. Did she believe that her words wouldn't hurt me? As I kept giving neutral answers to avoid confrontation, maybe she got bored of trying to bully me, and the calls started to decrease. It was a huge relief for me. Then, on New Year's Day the next year, my husband and I went to visit my in-laws. They were picking us up from the airport. Walter's dad greeted us warmly, which was a relief because I was really anxious about seeing his mom. His friendliness made me feel better. We exchanged New Year's greetings, and despite my worries, it seemed like things might be okay. We exchanged New Year's greetings, but my mother-in-law didn't even glance at me. Maybe she was upset about my distant response to her constant calls. Our relationship was strained, and I was trying to figure out how to handle it. "Were you tired from the trip? How about we grab a coffee at the airport cafe?" Walter's dad suggested, oblivious to the tension between his wife and me. "Sounds good. Isn't there a cafe on the second floor?" Walter replied cheerfully, and we made our way to a cafe inside the airport. "Should I drive us home?" Walter offered. "No, I'm still comfortable driving," his mother replied curtly. While the men chatted away, my mother-in-law and I sat in silence. "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom," I said after placing my order, and I stood up from the table. "Oh, I think I'll go too," my mother-in-law said, getting up to follow me. I had a sinking feeling about this. As we approached the entrance to the women's restroom, my mother-in-law, walking behind me, suddenly said, "Since you can't ride in the car, why don't you just walk back?" Confused by her words, I turned to look at her, and there it was again, that same expression on her face. "We're going back as a family of 3. You're a stranger here, aren't you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Walk back from here to my in-laws' house? How far was that? And to call her son's wife a stranger. I stood there, frozen in shock, as my mother-in-law kept hurling words at me. "I've been kind enough to call you often, but you always respond so coldly. Living near your parents' house has made you arrogant. I don't even want to think of you as my daughter-in-law. You're just a stranger, a complete stranger." Her voice was getting louder. I was stunned, but I didn't want to make a scene in public, so I replied quietly, "Yes, I understand." Feeling too embarrassed to go back to where Walter and his dad were, I headed towards the airport exit, feeling heavy-hearted. Even though she told me to walk back, this was an airport, Surely there were taxis or buses. I could take one as far as possible and then walk the rest of the way. But more than that, I was worried about how I would face my in-laws after this incident and how I would spend the next few days with them. For now, I searched for transportation to my in-laws' house on my phone. There was a bus leaving in just 10 minutes, but it wouldn't take me directly there. From where it dropped me off, I'd have to walk. It might take about 3 hours in total. 3 hours. I could manage that with my legs trained from mountain climbing. But there's a big difference between walking for fun and being forced to walk because of harassment. Tears filled my eyes. Was it really my fault? Maybe if I had been nicer on the phone, even after hearing those hurtful things, none of this would have happened. Lost in these thoughts as I walked, I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder from behind. Jennifer, why are you walking here? It was Walter's dad. Didn't my wife say something to you at the restroom? I was on my way there too, and I saw you and my wife talking, and then you started to leave, so I followed you. Looking at his kind face, the tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over, running down my cheeks. Jennifer, what's going on? He asked with concern. I made up my mind to tell Walter's dad the truth. So I shared with him exactly what his wife had said, and he became angrier than I'd ever seen him. Oh my, did she really say that to my son's wife? Then, to my surprise, he said something unexpected. I'll walk with you, Jennifer. With that, he stepped in front of me and began walking. Father-in-law? Don't worry. I used to enjoy mountain climbing, and I went on many trips with Walter when he was little. A 3-hour walk one way is nothing. Sure enough, Walter's dad walked with a steady stride, not at all like someone in their 60s. Come on, let's go. We didn't tell Walter we were leaving. Is that okay? I suddenly remembered that I hadn't informed Walter about our departure. Walter will be all right. She'll probably convince him to wait. I'll give him a call. With that, Walter's dad took out his phone. He was sending a text to Walter's mom. He let her know that he was walking back with me and that the car keys were in his bag. While we waited for the bus, Walter's dad's phone rang. He answered, and I could tell from his tone that he was trying to control his anger. It must have been Walter's mom on the other end. I heard what you said to Jennifer. If you're going to talk like that, then I won't ride in the car either. I could hear Walter's mom's panicked voice shouting from the other end. That's not true. She said she wanted to walk for exercise. I was more bewildered than anything. We'll discuss this when we get home, Walter's dad said firmly as he hung up and pocketed his phone. Maybe because Walter's dad's phone was busy, mine started ringing next. It was definitely Walter's mom. Walter's dad and I exchanged a glance. What could she want now? To tell us to get in the car? I definitely wasn't going to pick up, so I decided to ignore it too. Father-in-law and I quietly boarded the bus and continued our walk after getting off. This way is a shortcut. There's a slope here for a while. But let's do our best, he said, occasionally offering advice as we walked. It almost felt like we were climbing a mountain together. But I hadn't planned on walking so much today, and I was just wearing regular boots. Father-in-law had on leather shoes. This is going to be tough on our feet, I thought to myself, but I only asked once. Father-in-law, are your feet okay? Won't walking for a long time in those shoes hurt them? He glanced at my feet and squinted. Looks like we're in the same boat. It's unbelievable that she would make a woman walk so far in those shoes. We both thought about calling a taxi, but neither of us said anything, wanting to defy Walter's mom. But Jennifer, you're strong. You're walking such a long distance without complaining. I bet that's what attracted Walter to you, he said, making me feel a little better. After a long walk, we kept going, stopping at a grocery store to buy drinks from vending machines to stay hydrated. About 3 hours later, as the sun started to set, we finally reached my in-laws' house. Their car was parked out front. Mother-in-law and Walter must be inside. We're back, Father-in-law announced as he opened the front door and Walter rushed over. Jennifer, I was so worried. What happened? Why did you suddenly decide to walk back for exercise? Did Mom say something? No, that's not it. Mom told Jennifer to walk back, Father-in-law explained, looking understandably exhausted as he took a seat near the entrance. Mother-in-law, who had just come out of the living room, looked shocked and pale. No, that's not true. It's not what happened. It seems there's been a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? I couldn't stay silent any longer. You said, since you can't ride in the car, why don't you walk back? Didn't you? I stated plainly. I despise lying, and this situation reminded me of my mountain climbing club days. A 3-hour walk one way was good exercise. Walter glanced at his mother. He knows I'm not the type to lie, I added. The eyes of Walter, his father, and I were all fixed on mother-in-law. What, you believe this woman over me? You're choosing her over your family? She's just a stranger, isn't she? Mother-in-law screamed. So I wasn't allowed in the car because I'm a stranger, I said quietly. Mom, I can't believe you would say something like that. Jennifer is an important part of my family. I wanted you to feel the same way, Walter said, his fist clenched, his hand trembling with anger. If you're going to treat Jennifer like this, I'm done with you, Mom. I won't answer your calls anymore. Don't contact Jennifer either, Walter declared, taking my hand firmly. Let's go. Walter, wait, but Walter slammed the door shut, and without a backward glance, he took my hand and we started walking. A year later. Hey Jennifer, Walter, come check out this view. It's amazing up here. Walter, his father, and I were out mountain climbing together. 6 months after the New Year incident, Walter got a transfer and we moved back to our old neighborhood. After what happened at the New Year celebration, Walter's dad decided to get a divorce and move closer to our house. Climbing together on weekends has become a regular thing for us. Shall we have lunch here? At the summit, we eagerly began preparing our meal. As we worked, father-in-law started talking. Mom went on a spending spree after the divorce. Even though the property was divided fairly, it seemed she's already having financial troubles. Maybe she was feeling lonely. The divorce was tough, with lots of crying and screaming. Maybe it's best for both of us to have some distance now. She needs to expand her world too. Otherwise, she's the type to take out her stress on those close to her. I listened quietly to their conversation. I'll focus on my own world so I don't have to unload my stress onto others. Looking out at the view from the mountain with my dear family, I made that promise to myself. My name is Sarah, and I'm married to Tom. We've been married for 2 years now. I really wanted to have kids by now, but it hasn't happened yet. I like my job, it makes me feel important, so I'm not in a rush to have kids. But Tom feels differently. He recently told me he's upset that we haven't had kids yet. How long until we have a baby? Please, hurry up. My mom can't wait, he said. I went to the hospital, but the doctors said nothing was wrong with me. If you want, we can get you checked up too, I suggested to Tom. You're saying it's my fault we can't have kids. It can't be me, Tom argued. How can you be so sure? Sometimes it's the men who have issues, I replied. I can't be the problem. Stop saying that, Tom insisted. Well, if neither of us has fertility problems, let's see it as a good thing and wait a bit longer, I suggested. Why are you going easy on yourself? My mom really wants to meet her grandkids soon, Tom kept insisting. Every time Tom sees his mom, she asks, is the baby here yet? He's still refusing to get checked at the hospital, even though it's causing issues. He's sure he's not the reason we can't have kids. I got another checkup because I was worried, but everything seemed fine. Tom doesn't get that we only have one chance each month to have a baby. He keeps asking, are you ready for a baby yet? I'm tired of him and Mom asking, are you ready for a baby yet? Mom said the same thing today. She wants to see her grandchild's face soon, I complained. Again, please let's hurry up. Mom really wants it, Tom urged. We can't rush this, I explained. Every time we talk, it feels like we end up in the same argument. We've been having fewer and fewer conversations lately. Maybe it's because we don't talk much, but it's causing a lot of problems like this, I reflected. Mom's on her way, Tom suddenly announced. Right now, I exclaimed. Why does it matter? If she's coming, let me know so I can prepare. You're talking too much, Tom snapped back. She has a message for you, he added. Is it about kids again? I sighed. I've had enough. I don't care anymore, Tom muttered. That's what I hear every time I see her. It's your fault we can't have kids, so you need to explain it to her, I said, feeling frustrated. Just then, my mother-in-law walked in as we were talking. I'm sorry to interrupt. Here, I brought this for you, she said, handing me something. What is it? I asked. You can check them out yourself. They're a belly band and a lucky charm, she explained. What's the belly band for? I asked. It's important to keep your stomach cool when trying to have a baby, so you should use it, she advised. But it's too hot to wear a fuzzy belly band in the summer, I objected. You're looking at it the wrong way. This room is too cold because of the air conditioning. It chills your stomach, she argued. And how does this amulet work? I asked. It's a lucky charm from a famous temple for kids. After praying there, I heard that a celebrity had a baby. It seemed to bring good luck, so I went there yesterday despite the distance, she explained. You didn't need to go that far, I said. Don't worry just because you're more relaxed about this. As I've said before, I really want to see my grandkids. I went to the hospital, and it's not me, I repeated. Tom was sitting away from us, acting like he wasn't involved. Why haven't you gotten pregnant yet? My mother-in-law suddenly asked me. I'm not sure why you're asking, I replied. Why don't you try another hospital for a second opinion? Maybe a specialized hospital? I'll help you find one, she suggested. You don't have to do that. I'm sure it's not Tom, so I can only think it's because of you, I responded. Tom hasn't been checked yet. How can you be so sure he's not infertile? My mother-in-law asked. Because Tom, who seemed like he wasn't paying attention, interrupted the conversation. Mom, don't say things that aren't necessary, he advised. Sorry, my mother-in-law stopped talking suddenly. I think a package will be delivered by courier tomorrow, so please accept it, she said. I just wanted to give you this today, so I'll leave now, my mother-in-law announced before leaving me with only a belly band and a lucky charm for the baby. The next day, when the package arrived, I couldn't help but laugh. Inside were all sorts of good luck charms for having a baby. Your mom sent me a package. What was in it? I asked Tom. Pomegranates, herring roe, and peaches, he replied. Why did she send those? I wondered. All three are seen as lucky foods that are supposed to bring good fortune for having kids, he explained. I get it. Mom really wants to see her grandkids, I thought out loud. I understand she's excited, but it feels a bit overwhelming, Tom remarked. Why are you talking about Mom like that? She's genuinely thrilled about having a grandchild, Tom defended. Don't you feel pressured too? I asked. Yeah, but I'm not worried. It's not my problem. It doesn't concern me, he replied. What do you mean it doesn't concern you? It's our issue because we're together, I argued. It's your problem that we can't have kids, so no, it's not my concern, he retorted. It feels like it's my fault that we can't conceive, even though the hospital says there's nothing wrong with me. So why don't you go to another hospital for a thorough checkup like my mom suggested? I proposed. Why don't you ask her to help find a good hospital? He suggested. The hospital I went to is well known for fertility treatments. But maybe it's just famous, not actually good, I speculated. If you're suggesting that, why not ask your mom to find one? He suggested. Are you finally willing to do it? I asked. Yes, if you also get checked out, he agreed. Why should I go to the hospital? I questioned. I couldn't understand why Tom was so confident. Then he dropped a bombshell on me. I've never mentioned it before, but you've been suspicious for a while, and I'm tired of hiding it. So I'll tell you, Tom confessed. What is it? I asked, confused. I've actually been married before, Tom revealed. What? What do you mean? I exclaimed, shocked. I got divorced 2 years before marrying you, he admitted. Why didn't you tell me? I demanded. Well, I got divorced because my ex cheated on me. She didn't ask for child support or anything, so I didn't think it was important to mention, he explained. Are you saying you have children? I asked, bewildered. A son, yes. I haven't seen him since he was born after the divorce, he confessed. I'm lost. I don't understand what you're saying, I admitted. That proves I'm not incapable of having kids. That's why you were so sure it wasn't me, he pointed out. I'm hurt that you think it's me, but it's possible you became infertile in the 2 years after your divorce, I argued. You're still blaming others. You're the issue, so own up to it and do something about it, he accused. I'm not talking about admitting or not admitting. You're starting to annoy me, I shot back. In my 2nd year of marriage, I learned for the first time that Tom had been divorced and had a child. Even after hearing his story, I still wasn't completely convinced that I was to blame for our inability to have kids. I decided to dig deeper into Tom's past. I planned to ask for a divorce once I finished my research. I couldn't bear to stay with Tom any longer. I tried my best to avoid talking to him because he always said hurtful things to me. And of course, we never had intimate relations under such strained circumstances, so pregnancy was out of the question. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, unaware of our situation, continued to pressure me about having children. Then, one day, Tom approached me looking irritated. By now, I was accustomed to being treated with disdain. He spoke up. I've been thinking about getting a divorce. We don't talk anymore. All we do is fight, and we haven't been able to have kids no matter how long I wait, he declared. I was surprised by his sudden announcement, but I responded calmly. Okay, that's fine. What? Tom was puzzled by my response. He must have expected me to object. Here are the divorce papers. I've filled out all the necessary information already, he stated. What? Why are they already filled out? I asked, shocked. I filled them out so I could end things whenever I wanted. Do you want a divorce? He asked. Yes, I replied, only partly joking. I'm not joking. Do you really want this? He pressed. You said it yourself, I reminded him. I didn't think it would come to this. Did you expect me to beg you not to go through with it? He questioned. Well, we hardly talk anymore, so I thought maybe this was a chance for us to talk and fix things, I explained. Then why didn't you say that from the start? He asked. I wanted things to go back to how they were. But that's not possible, I replied. I'll divorce you right now if that's what you want, he offered. That's not what I want, I admitted. Despite Tom's offer for a divorce, he continued to complain. Our conversations went on, even though it seemed pointless. Then my mother-in-law arrived, right on time. What's going on? She asked. I went out with some friends and got you some gifts, she said, handing me another charm. I visited a different shrine known for childbirth, so I got you this. I've been praying there, and I'm sure it'll bring you good luck this time. We don't need this anymore, I declared. My mother-in-law's face lit up at my words, but I could tell she had misunderstood something. I had a feeling things were about to get complicated again. Well, does this mean you no longer need it? She asked eagerly. Finally? I guess it's because of all my efforts. I'm so relieved, she exclaimed. That's partly right. We need to go back to show our gratitude, she suggested. We? I asked. My mother-in-law stood before me, looking happy. Tom stood beside me, silent, avoiding eye contact. I knew my next words would disappoint my mother-in-law. What is it exactly? Please don't tell me you're about to say what I think you're going to say, she urged. We've decided to get a divorce, I announced. What? Divorce? I thought you were expecting a baby, she replied, shocked. We were just talking about it. Is this a sudden decision? She pressed. Not really. I've been thinking about it for a while, I explained. Are you leaving because you can't have kids? She speculated. No, that's not why I'm divorcing him, I clarified. Well, if you can't get pregnant, maybe it's better for him to divorce you and marry someone else, she suggested. It would be his third marriage, not second. You know that? I reminded her. I found out recently. His ex-wife got pregnant soon after they divorced, she revealed. Okay, I responded, feeling a mix of emotions. So I can only assume you're to blame. If you leave, I'll feel relieved, Tom's mother asserted. I understand. Tom has always been popular with women. He'll find someone soon. Hopefully, our next meeting will bring better news, I replied. Well, if you've made up your mind, get divorced soon. I'm leaving. You two sort out the rest, my mother-in-law declared before leaving, unaware of the whole truth. Once she left, Tom and I continued our conversation. Let's file for divorce right away. I want to start a family soon, and I realize I don't enjoy spending time with you anymore. Let's just get it over with, Tom suggested. Then do it quickly, I replied, handing him the papers to fill out. All I have to do is submit them. By the way, you'll have to leave the house when we divorce, I informed him. What? Why? Tom questioned. I've been making mortgage payments, have you forgotten? My parents paid off the loan and bought this house outright. You were just repaying my parents' loan, I clarified. Oh, so you're leaving because of this? Tom realized. We did have quite a bit of money saved up, he continued. I don't have any money saved, but didn't you say you had around 10 million? I reminded him. That's the money I saved before we got married, so it's not included in the property division, he explained. Right, I confirmed. Well, it doesn't matter. You're starting a new chapter, he remarked. Yes, and I'm also going to sue you and your mother for emotional distress, I declared. What? Why? Tom asked, surprised. For all the hurtful things you've said to me, treating me like I'm defective, I explained. But it's true, Tom argued. Do you really think I'm the reason we couldn't conceive? I challenged. It's obvious. I have a biological child, Tom insisted. That's when I revealed everything to Tom, shocking him. It turns out your child from your ex-wife might not be yours, I revealed. What are you talking about? Tom asked, bewildered. I got curious about Tom's past after learning about his previous marriage, so I decided to look for clues in his house. Eventually, I found a picture, I explained. Tom tends to hold onto old memories, and I found a few tucked away in a drawer in his work desk, I continued. I looked up his ex-wife's name on social media and found her profile right away. From there, I learned more about who she was, I revealed. Isn't this your ex-wife? I showed him a screen from social media. Tom looked surprised, but I wasn't shocked. Is the child in this picture really yours? I asked him. Tom seemed puzzled. I continued with my story. This child clearly looks foreign. I was looking at your ex-wife's social media, and her husband is from another country. I'm not familiar with him. It seems they're living abroad, I explained. I divorced my ex-wife quickly because she cheated on me, but before the divorce, she got pregnant and claimed it was our child. I'm pretty sure it was his child, Tom admitted. Really? I asked. In any case, you don't have any biological children, I pointed out. Could I be the reason you can't conceive? Tom wondered. That's likely. I went to another hospital, and my body was fine. I'm going to get checked out too, I replied. Will you drop the divorce and go through treatment with me if I'm the reason you haven't been able to conceive? Tom asked. Why would I do that? I've already filled out the divorce papers. I'll file them tomorrow, I replied. Don't say that. I still care about you, Tom confessed. You don't enjoy being around me, do you? You'll find someone new soon, just as your mother predicted, I remarked. Let's discuss it again, Tom suggested. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I want you to pack your things and leave this week, I insisted. Oh no, Tom muttered. You wanted a divorce, didn't you? I reminded him. I'll talk to my lawyer about alimony. He'll hear from us. The next day, I filed for divorce. Tom moved out reluctantly back to his parents' place. It seems Tom hasn't told his mother that he might be the reason for our infertility. She's been pushing him to remarry quickly after the divorce, hoping for grandchildren. If he does remarry, I feel sorry for his next wife. His mother will probably pressure her too for not having children. Since the divorce, I've thrown myself into my work. I sold the house, Tom, and I shared for a good price and repaid my parents the money they lent me, as well as the alimony I received from Tom and his mother. Now I'm living in an apartment. I've started dating a coworker who was supportive during my divorce. We were friends before, and now we're living together. If I marry this man, I hope we'll be blessed with children and that I'll find happiness again. Hey, Mom, can you grab me a beer, please? Mom, are you deaf? Oh, so now you can hear me? I asked you to bring me a beer. This is how it always is when my son and his wife talk to me. We've been living together for 5 years, and they've never really listened to me. They usually ignore me or just boss me around like I'm their maid. My daughter-in-law, Jean, talks badly about me to everyone, and my son, Paul, treats me like I'm just here to clean up after them. I decide to ignore them and pretend to watch TV, acting like I can't hear them. I'm fed up with them only paying attention when they want something and ignoring me the rest of the time. After a while of ignoring them, Jean grabs the remote and turns off the show I was watching. I'm surprised when she says loudly, right next to my ear, "Hey, mother-in-law, can you hear me? Make sure you make Paul's lunch tomorrow, okay?" Her voice was so loud it made my ears ring, and I couldn't help but grimace. Seeing my reaction, my daughter-in-law laughed and left the living room with my son. I couldn't help but wonder why she couldn't be a bit more considerate, especially since I'm her husband's mother and she relies on me every day. But judging from my son's behavior, it seemed like I was just a maid to her. There was no apology from either of them, and I didn't feel like they cared about how I felt. Frustrated, I sent an email to my husband and decided to leave the house. My name is Karen, and I'll be turning 72 this year. 5 years ago, my son and his wife asked if they could move in with me because they were worried about the future and wanted to save money. Since then, we've been living together as 2 families in one house. If you live with us, Mom, you'll feel safer, right? Maybe you're right. My husband is a workaholic. He started his own company when he was young and still works hard even at 73. Our house felt quiet after our son moved out. When I talked to my husband about our son and his wife moving in with us, he just said, "Do whatever you like." So, with not much discussion and feeling a bit bored, I agreed, hoping life would get livelier. When they moved in, my son's wife, Jean, and I split the housework. But as she said her part-time job got busier, I ended up doing more and more. She helps if I ask, but usually she's reluctant or busy with her own stuff. So I stopped asking for her help, and I do everything myself, feeling unappreciated. Even at meal times with the whole family, there's hardly any conversation. I guess I got used to it, like with my husband. One day, while I was making dinner for 3 as usual, I got a message from my husband saying, "I'll be late for work, don't need dinner." This wasn't unusual, but the problem was with my son and his wife. "Dad's gonna be late, huh?" "Yeah, I'm not hungry either." "Oh, I'm going out with a friend, so I don't need dinner." "Why are you telling me this?" "I've already made it," I said. "It's okay, just save it for tomorrow." Even though it was dinner time, they were about to leave without a word if I didn't say anything. They could have told me earlier if they didn't need dinner. It seemed like they'd never think to consider me first. I couldn't help but feel frustrated at their rudeness. But they left without any apology. What am I working so hard for? I sat in a quiet living room, looking at the dinner I'd already prepared, not going to waste. What am I even doing? Just thinking about it made me feel so tired. I wrapped up the still warm dinner and put it in the fridge before heading to bed. The next morning, when I came downstairs, my husband, who had woken up earlier, apologized, saying, "I'm sorry." Our conversation was short, as usual. It could have ended there, but when my husband noticed my expression, he furrowed his brows slightly and asked, "Did Paul and his wife have dinner?" "No, they said they didn't eat and went out," I replied. "I see," my husband said, noticing the dinner for 3 in the fridge. I was glad to finally have a conversation after so long, so I told him what happened last night. My usually quiet husband listened carefully. After hearing me out, he gently said, "You don't have to do everything." He acknowledged that our son's behavior was becoming worse every day, but that doesn't mean you should overwork yourself. His words felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I realized I had been pushing myself too hard and felt relieved that my husband understood. My son and his wife were grown-ups now, so I didn't need to do everything for them. With that realization, the situation seemed a bit brighter. "I might be late from work again, so you don't need to prepare dinner for me tonight," my husband said. "Oh, okay," I replied with a smile. With his words in mind, I decided it was time for my son and his wife to understand this too. Even though it was Sunday, I said goodbye to my husband and made up my mind to stand up to my son and his wife. Once my husband left, my son and his wife finally woke up in the afternoon, still in their pajamas. They came into the living room and immediately asked, "What's for lunch?" "Why don't you have what's left from yesterday?" "But you could at least warm it up for us or set it on the table. You're not small children. You can do it yourself," I replied. "Well, mother-in-law, you are getting old, aren't you?" Jean, my daughter-in-law, joked with a laugh, and Paul, my son, joined in, looking at me. "I'm exhausted because Jean hasn't been helping with the housework at all," I said. "Oh, can't you manage without me? Is it your menopause or something?" Jean retorted, laughing. Their attitudes made me sigh. They went back to their room without cleaning up after eating, seeming unbothered. As expected, my husband didn't return until late that night. Since I didn't need to cook for him, I bought myself a ready-made meal from the supermarket. "Oh, Mom, what are you eating?" "Ready-made food." "What about dinner?" Paul asked. "I don't know, mother-in-law. What are you thinking? Have you forgotten about your family?" Jean added. I wondered if Jean was incapable of having a conversation without throwing in some barb. I decided to ignore my daughter-in-law, which seemed to quiet Paul down. However, he quickly picked up his phone and started complaining again. "You don't work. Mom, you should at least take care of the house." I thought that since it was their day off, they could prepare their own meals for once. But instead, they decided to order delivery. "Give us the money later," Paul said, which made me lose my patience, especially since they were always talking about saving money. I agreed not to ask them for money to cover our living expenses, and I never bothered them about it. But I never expected them to take advantage of me like this. I decided to completely ignore them, refusing to do anything for my son and daughter-in-law who showed such disrespect. "Hey Mom, beer," Paul demanded, while Jean kept making snide remarks. Paul talked to me like I was their housemaid. Ignoring them, I turned my back and pretended to watch TV, acting like I couldn't hear them. After a while of ignoring them, it seemed like she gave up and stopped talking to me. But this peace didn't last long. Before I knew it, my daughter-in-law snuck up behind me, grabbed the TV remote, and turned off the TV. Startled, I looked up only for her to shout into my ear, "Hey, mother-in-law, can you hear me? Make sure to prepare lunch for Paul tomorrow, okay?" Her voice was so loud it hurt my ears, making me flinch. Laughing at my reaction, my daughter-in-law left the living room with Paul. I couldn't help but wonder why she couldn't show a bit of courtesy, especially considering that I'm her husband's mother and she relies on me regularly. But judging from Paul's attitude, it seemed like I was nothing more than a maid to her. As it turned out, there was no sign of consideration for me at all, and I didn't even hear an apology for last night's dinner from either of them. Letting out a deep sigh, I sent a text to my husband and made up my mind to leave the house. Early the next morning, I packed my things and left before they woke up. When I arrived at a nearby business hotel, my phone buzzed with texts from Paul, who had just woken up before heading to work. Apparently, they were in quite a chaos this morning. Texts and calls from both of them flooded my phone. When I checked the messages, all I saw were complaints, like "What are you doing? I told you I need lunch." Jean also sent a mocking text. "Are you wandering around forgetting your responsibilities?" It seemed they were struggling just because I hadn't prepared breakfast for them, which made me chuckle a bit. Seeing a call from Paul during his lunch break, I decided it was time to talk to him. "You finally picked up, Mom. Where the hell are you, and what are you doing?" Paul's voice sounded impatient. "It's none of your business, is it? You didn't even prepare our food. Where are you, Paul? You're not a child. You can make your own food, can't you?" I responded, feeling irritated. If he had struggled so much to prepare just one meal, he should have shown some appreciation. But to my surprise, he said something unexpected. "I'm paying for living expenses, so I need you to do the housework." "Living expenses? What are you talking about? I never received such a thing," I said, puzzled. "Why not? Jean should have been giving it to you every month, so don't lie," Paul insisted, claiming he was paying me living expenses. Despite my truthful denial, Paul started calling me a liar. The truth is, my husband covers all their living expenses, including their food. Even after explaining this repeatedly, Paul refused to believe me. I could hear Jean in the background saying, "You're probably just playing dumb and spending it for yourself." Unable to continue the conversation, I ended it and said, "I don't know what I don't know, and I don't plan to come home for a while." "Why not? What are we supposed to do for food?" Paul's voice sounded desperate. "Figure it out yourselves." By now, I hung up the phone and let out another big sigh. Why do they believe they're not in the wrong, even after all this? I didn't understand what Paul was talking about earlier when he mentioned our living expenses. About a week after I left the house, the situation improved. My husband, who had come to check on me, apparently talked to Paul and Jean, and their texts suddenly became more respectful and submissive. Wondering what had happened, I received a text from my husband. "Paul and Jean want to apologize. If you feel like it, please come home." Thanks to my husband's talk, they finally seemed to understand. I replied to my husband's text, made preparations, and decided to go home that day. When I returned home, Paul and Jean were waiting at the entrance, their faces pale and worn out. It seemed they were quite upset by the lecture from my husband. I decided to hear the story about this past week from them and my husband about the living expenses. I mentioned on the phone I said I didn't receive them, right? I asked. "You said you wanted to save money, so I didn't say anything." "Actually, Dad was really mad at us about that," Paul explained. It seemed my son had misled his father about his contribution to the household expenses, believing I had been lying and portraying me as the villain. However, when my husband explained the reality of my busy schedule and showed him our household book, Paul quieted down. "You couldn't even believe me, but Jean kept saying that she was giving you the money. So what happened to your living expenses?" I asked, feeling betrayed. From my son's perspective, he was definitely paying, so he must have been baffled that the money wasn't reaching me. It seemed my husband and son confronted Jean and made her confess. At first, Jean pretended ignorance, but when my husband confronted her, she finally confessed everything. I'm appalled. She was accusing me of squandering money on the phone. But it turns out she was just talking about herself, I said, feeling betrayed. But living with my in-laws can be stifling, and everyone was inviting me, so I just. Just because of that, you thought it was okay to embezzle our living expenses. You made me look like a fool too, Paul interjected, his voice full of frustration. What? You're acting all high and mighty too, Jean retorted defensively. At the point when the two of them began to stray from the topic and argue, my husband cleared his throat loudly. Startled by his sudden interruption, Paul and Jean fell silent immediately, seemingly terrified of my husband's disapproval. I couldn't help but chuckle at their reaction, like children caught misbehaving. Excuses, excuses. Cut the crap. First, you should sincerely apologize to your mom, my husband said firmly. I'm sorry. The two of them finally bowed their heads to me. But Paul still tried to justify himself, saying he had been taking it easy because it was his home. I've been busy at work, and I just wanted to relax at home, he added. So what about your mother, who was being taken for granted and mocked by her big son and his wife, even at her own home? My husband's words cut through my son's excuses, leaving him speechless. I'm appalled at my son, who, despite his age, still relies on his parents, and at Jean, who took advantage of that to embezzle money. My husband continued, his tone firm. Mom, I'm sorry. You see, I'm apologizing to you, Paul said, trying to make amends. Do you think an apology makes everything okay? Please reflect on yourself a bit, I responded firmly. The two of them thought that bowing their heads to me would resolve everything smoothly, and they were flustered by my words and tried to make excuses. But I could see through their scheme, and I shook my head. Whether you contribute to the living expenses or not, I can't overlook that attitude. You have to learn to be more grateful, I said firmly. But aren't you worried about your future too, mother-in-law? Paul interjected. Yes, I'm full of worries about relying on people like you. How can you talk to us like that? I retorted. You splurge our living expense out of stress from living with us, Jean added defensively. I can't have someone like you stay with us any longer, I stated firmly, silencing them with my resolve. They needed to learn once again how rude their actions were while living together as a couple. Later, we managed to have them move out. In the days that followed, Jean, my son's wife, started to come to our house occasionally to learn household chores from me. She continually vented about how my son Paul did not lift a finger to help with any housework. As she had always been showing off to her colleagues, I assumed she couldn't complain to anyone else. Now I understand just how much I relied on you, Karen, she admitted. Indeed, and yet you have the audacity to accuse me of being deaf and squandering money, I remarked, feeling vindicated. Unable to live with us anymore and facing financial constraints due to her misuse of funds, Jean fervently complained about her now austere life. However, as I listened, I couldn't help but feel that she was simply facing the consequences of her actions. As for Paul, he started to bring home delicious snacks as gifts from time to time, seemingly trying to make up for his previous lack of consideration. Although he still mentioned his past behavior occasionally, I appreciated his efforts. I knew he wasn't the most expressive or communicative person, but his gestures were touching nonetheless. During our discussions with Paul and Jean, my husband expressed his gratitude, saying, "Thanks for your hard work, honey. I appreciate it." I'm glad that I can talk to my husband like this again. I reflected, feeling grateful for the calmness that had returned to our lives. Despite the challenges we faced, I found myself leading a life that was calmer and happier than before.
I really thought Mom had a lot of money saved up. I mentioned it before, right? It's time to kick her out. Why keep a jobless person here? I've been living here for 3 months, and my son and his wife used up all my savings. They treated me badly. I had enough, so I left quietly. Then, my son called me. Mom, what's happening? Tony sounded worried on the phone. Around that time, something I did became big news across the United States. I'm Sarah, and I'm 70 years old. I lived in France for a while, but I got sick, so I came back to the States. My old apartment was gone, so I asked my son and his wife if I could stay with them for a bit. Tony, my only son, is 44 and works in an office. He and his wife, Alice, don't have kids, and they live quietly. We lost touch while I was away, but I decided to reconnect, and Tony seemed happy to hear from me. I explained my situation and asked if I could stay for a while. Tony agreed, though he seemed unsure. It felt awkward to rely on them. But the happiness of being with family again outweighed my doubts. With a mix of nerves and happiness, I took a taxi from the airport to their house. When I got there, Tony and Alice greeted me at the door. Tony seemed glad to see me, but Alice looked upset. I plan to stay here for a few months. My stuff will arrive later, I said, leaving my carry-on bag and heading to the living room. We talked about our lives, jobs, and my time in France. When Tony asked why I moved there, I just said, I wanted to enjoy the French countryside as I get older. Tony laughed, but Alice stayed unhappy. We also talked about my health issues. I've been dizzy a lot, and might have Meniere's disease. Sometimes I can't stand and feel sick when it happens. I don't feel safe living alone, so I want to stay with them until I feel better. After our chat, I went to get my stuff for my carry-on. As I organized it in the hallway, I heard Tony and Alice talking. Are you serious about letting Sarah stay? I don't want to live with an old woman. She's my mom, Alice said. You're not always home because you work part-time, Tony replied. But what about when we're off work? How long is she staying? I want her gone. Alice insisted. Mom will leave eventually. Let's talk about money tomorrow. Just keep it down, she might hear you, Tony warned. She can't hear us, she's old. Old age brings sharp ears for insults, Alice said. There I was hearing their conversation in the hallway. I felt bad for suddenly staying with Tony and his wife. It must be hard for them, but I'm happy to spend time with them after so long. When Tony was young, I raised him alone after my husband died. We didn't have much, and Tony faced difficulties with his health. This doesn't make up for that, but I came here to apologize and show gratitude. It's a shame I'm not welcome, but they have their own lives. I went to the guest room they gave me, trying to calm my anxious heart. The next morning, Tony went to work, leaving just Alice and me at home. While I was doing some crafting in the living room, Alice came up to me. Hey Sarah, can you clean up this mess? I looked around and saw fabric scraps and threads scattered about. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll clean it up. Do you want to see what I'm making? I showed her the small pouch I was sewing, with a little green turtle design. It's a turtle pouch. I love turtles, so I make crafts with turtle themes. It even has a zipper on its shell, I explained. That's nice, Sarah, but you can't stay here all day. Find somewhere else to go when I'm not working. You're in the way, Alice said, cutting me off, clearly uninterested. But I get dizzy if I go outside too much, I protested. I'll drive you to the nearby community center to stay during the day. I have things to do at home, Alice said firmly, without room for discussion. She added, and while you're here, help with the chores. You're not just here to relax. Since we're letting you stay, do some cleaning and laundry instead of crafting. Stunned, I finally replied, okay, and slowly got up from the armchair. Despite feeling dizzy and sore, I ended up doing all the housework. Alice and Tony treated me like a housekeeper, and it seemed like Alice hadn't been keeping up with chores before I arrived. That night, when Tony got home, he asked, Mom, did you bring your banking card? He spoke with a smile. I don't mind you living with us, but life costs money. Could you chip in? I looked at Tony, nodded, and stood up. I took out my banking card from my handmade pouch and handed it to him. He checked it quickly, and his face tightened. Wait, Mom, is this all you have saved? Any other accounts? I replied. That's all I have. I don't need much at my age. No chronic illnesses or anything. I smiled as the conversation continued, but Tony's expression darkened. This isn't enough money, not even $10,000. You said you were living well abroad, so I assumed. Tony kept pressing me, asking if I had more money. When I said no, he sighed and slumped his shoulders. Okay, I'll hold on to this cash for now. I'm doing you a favor by letting you live here, so this is the least you could do. After getting my account password, Tony took my bank and debit cards and left the room. That night, lying in bed, I could hear Tony muttering through the wall that separated our rooms. This is disappointing. I thought Mom was wealthy. Our household is actually struggling financially. We shouldn't have let her stay. We gain nothing from having her here. They sounded confident, talking openly in the next room. Maybe they wanted me to hear them. In my cold bed, I fought back tears of loneliness and sadness. The next day, since Alice had a day off, she drove me to the local community center. When I opened my bag to continue my crafting, I realized I forgot the fabric I needed at home. I hesitated to ask Alice to go back and get it. Luckily, my dizziness wasn't too bad that day, so I decided to walk home to fetch it since I knew the area well. As I approached the house, I glanced through the window and saw Alice with a man I didn't recognize. They seemed very close, and I hesitated outside for a moment before deciding not to interrupt them. It dawned on me that maybe they wanted me out so I wouldn't interfere with whatever was going on between them. Back at the community center, thoughts of Alice and the man kept swirling in my mind, so I decided to call someone for advice. From then on, I avoided bringing up the situation and continued interacting with Tony and his wife as usual. However, whenever I left the house, I made sure to leave a red turtle pouch conspicuously on the living room side table. 3 months had gone by since I moved in with Tony's family. By then, I had essentially become the household's maid. When I was home, I had to do endless chores, and when Alice was around, I was sent off to the community center. Most of my savings had been drained by Tony, who had a gambling addiction. He spent most of his free time on lotteries and slots, likely stemming from financial hardships he faced as a child. At first, I tried to talk to him about it, but it always ended in anger. After enduring 3 months of hardship, I reached my breaking point. One night before a long weekend, I decided to address something I've been pondering. Tony, Alice, I want to thank you for letting me stay with you. Tony, I know I caused difficulties for you when you were young due to our financial situation. I apologize for any trouble I caused, but I'm grateful. I presented a homemade turtle pouch from the table. It was green with a zipper on the shell. This is a token of my appreciation to both of you. I hope you'll accept it. To my surprise, neither Tony nor Alice showed any interest in my handmade gift. Mom, enough of that. Can't we access some funds from your French account or something? Tony suggested. I already told you, there's no more money. Look, I put a lot of effort into making this. Can't you accept it as a gesture of love? Remember how happy you used to be when I filled the shell with candy and a bit of pocket money? Tony's irritation grew. I'm not a child anymore. I don't find joy in receiving something like this, Sarah. How much longer do you plan to depend on us? Frankly, it's irritating. Tony and his wife exchanged a cold look, appearing desperate. I asked Tony, do you remember Joe? He helped us out in that old apartment we lived in. What? I don't remember. Stop bringing up old stories, Tony replied sharply. A heavy silence settled between us as I held onto the turtle pouch tightly, feeling the paper inside. The next day, Tony and his wife went on vacation, leaving me behind. After our conversation the previous night, I had already planned to leave the house. I quickly packed my bags with the arranged carrier and sent them off to my home in France. I made sure to include the red turtle pouch in my carry-on bag. Leaving a brief note of gratitude and farewell on the table, I walked out of the house where I had stayed for 3 months. After leaving the house, I didn't immediately return home. Instead, I stayed in a hotel in the US for a while. I had matters to attend to, and I figured Tony and his wife would reach out to me eventually. True to my expectations, about 2 weeks later, Tony called. Mom, what's the deal with the turtle pouch? It's yours, right? Tony's voice sounded frantic over the phone. Oh, you noticed? I replied calmly. I wasn't surprised when I saw the news on TV about the turtle-shaped pouch. Inside it was a check for $1 million. It was my way of expressing gratitude for all they'd done and apologizing for any trouble I caused them when Tony was young. Some might think it shallow to make amends with money, but I had dreamed of this day for over 40 years, saving up bit by bit. Before meeting Tony after so long, I did some research and discovered he was in debt. He had tried to clear his gambling debts by gambling more, only to sink deeper. Despite having a steady job, he couldn't break free from the cycle. I simply wanted him to pay off his debts and find peace. However, they refused my gesture, forgetting the kindness they had once shown my family. So I decided to split the $1 million check into smaller amounts and donate it to charities and welfare organizations across America. I placed the donations in the handmade turtle pouch and sent them anonymously. The turtle pouch became a sensation, making headlines and trending on social media. Alice, isn't that the turtle pouch? Someone commented online. Yeah, looks like it, another remarked. Yes, that's the one. I was planning to give them filled with money too, I replied. I see. Well, he could have just told us. We would have accepted it. If you didn't want my feelings, then you don't need my money either. Tony's voice was angry over the phone. It's my money. How dare you deceive me? Give it back, he demanded. I couldn't bear to listen to Tony's anger any longer, so I pulled the phone away from my ear. After a moment, I spoke. All right, calm down. You're giving me a headache. There's one more turtle. And if you really want it, it's yours. Tony eventually settled down and insisted on having the turtle. We agreed to meet later at a cafe. On the appointed day, I brought the last red turtle in an envelope to our meeting spot. Tony and his wife were already there, demanding the money before I even sat down. When I silently pulled out the red turtle, Tony snatched it immediately, unzipping its shell. But instead of finding a check, he found a small electronic device. What the heck is this? Tony was confused. He found a tiny button and pressed it. A voice started playing, and Alice, standing next to Tony, turned pale. Seated next to Tony, Alice's expression changed as she heard a voice recording. It was her own, speaking warmly with another man who wasn't Tony. What is this? Why? What's happening? Alice seemed to finally understand that it was a recording of her having an affair at home. She tried to grab the recorder from Tony's hand, but he held on tight. While they struggled, I opened the envelope. I brought out several pictures and laid them on the table, showing Alice cheating with another man at home. Faced with undeniable evidence, Alice was flustered and kept asking, why? Why? Tony picked up the photos one by one, studying them closely. Something didn't feel right since I arrived at your house. A friend suggested I hire someone to find out, and even offered to cover the costs. Why would you do this? What's wrong with you? Alice's voice trembled. Well, you're my son's wife. It's heartbreaking to think family would deceive each other. Maybe you'll understand when you're older. Fate brought me here to uncover your infidelity, Alice. Have you been lying to me this whole time? Tony's disappointment was evident in his voice. Tony, when did this start? You have secrets too. If you're saying she cheated, you need to admit your mistakes, Alice argued. I never cheated, but what about the money you owe? Tony went quiet, and Alice took her turn to speak. What about you spending all your money on gambling? I only use the money I earn, and you have a part-time job, so you should have some savings, Alice replied. As I listened to their argument, it was obvious this couple had been holding on somehow until now. Both of you are broke. Tony, you owe $40,000. Alice, you've been giving all your earnings to your other person. I had someone check your finances too, I'd interrupted. Both Tony and Alice were really surprised, and they started yelling at each other. I was stunned when I found out about the investigation results. This couple was really close to running out of money. Listen, if we get Mom's money, we can pay off the debt. So just give it to us already, Tony insisted. I already gave away all the money. The only thing left is this red turtle statue, I clarified. He spent all my savings on gambling, remember? Tony accused Alice. What? No way. All of it? Alice's eyes widened in shock. In a fit of anger, Tony lunged at me across the table. Other people in the cafe started paying attention, and the staff rushed over. The $1 million was supposed to be mine. It's mine. Give it back, Tony shouted. Soon, the police had to be called to calm Tony down. After they talked to him, they kindly escorted me back to my hotel because I was worried about Tony's aggressive behavior. A week later, Tony and Alice's relationship had fallen apart completely because of the affair and money problems. They got divorced. Tony, now single, got even more caught up in gambling and debt. He was caught trying to steal money from his job and was fired. To make things worse, his angry outburst in the cafe was recorded and shared on social media, making it hard for him to find another job. Unable to face the embarrassment, Tony cut off all contact and disappeared. After the divorce, Alice didn't have anyone to depend on, so she moved into an old public housing unit and lived alone. Just as I was about to make a donation to help rescue turtles, a post I made online joking about my own turtle went viral. Alice started experiencing harassment and stalking because of it, which eventually spread to her part-time job and got her fired. Even the man she was having an affair with got tired of her and left. Now she doesn't have any income and is relying on temporary assistance for needy families. After that, I went back to my home in France. Once I finished unpacking in my apartment, I changed into a dress smoothly. While I was going over some work documents, I heard a noise at the door. It seemed Joe, my roommate, had come back home. "Hey, Madam President. Welcome back. How was your trip to America?" Joe greeted me with a smile as he hung up his coat and put down his bags. "Hey Joe, I'm back, and look, I brought back so many souvenirs," I said excitedly. "Wow, all my favorites. Thanks. I'll bring some to the storytelling event at the community center tomorrow," Joe said happily. Joe carefully examined each souvenir on the table, his face glowing with delight. After we both got back on our feet, Joe and his wife moved away for work. Years later, we unexpectedly met in the city, and I started helping with a support program for people in need that Joe had started. By then, Joe's wife had passed away, and we began working together as partners in both business and life. I've been leading the organization since Joe retired a few years ago. What began as a small initiative by Joe and his late wife has grown into a large international organization over the past 30 years. Currently, our focus is on helping single moms raise their children. A few years ago, we moved to France to study their advanced support systems. While we've become well known in France, we're still not widely recognized in America. I plan to expand our activities there soon and wanted to spend some time with Tony and his family just as a mother before they found out about my work. In the end, I couldn't get them to understand how I felt. But that's their decision. Even though it was brief, I was happy to spend time together as a family. Now at 70 years old, I believe age is just a number. There's still so much I want and need to accomplish. I straightened my back in my dress and began pondering my upcoming international speech for tomorrow. You need to heal your hand quickly, or it will get worse. I didn't understand why my husband George took me on a fishing trip in a rowboat and let me drift away while he filmed me laughing on his phone. I thought maybe he wanted to make up after an argument. But as I drifted alone, scared and cold, I realized his true intentions. Thankfully, a man rescued me, saving my life. My name is Carol, and I'm 38 years old. I live with my husband George, who is 3 years older. We used to work together at the same company, but in different departments. We didn't interact much until George started visiting my department for no reason. Eventually, he asked me out to dinner, surprising me. We grew closer and got married 2 years ago, much to the surprise of everyone, especially my parents. They were overjoyed at our wedding. After living with my parents, George and I decided to get our own place, not too far from my parents' house. I'm home. Welcome back. Dinner is ready. Is that curry I smell? Yes, it is. Let's dig in quickly. Awesome, your curry is the best. I usually take care of the housework because I finish work on time and don't have to do overtime. Even when I lived with my parents, I enjoyed cooking and cleaning, so it's no trouble for me. But on weekends or when George gets off work early, he takes over. Our life as newlyweds was going really well without any problems. But about a year and a half into our marriage, things started to go downhill. One day, while we were eating, George sighed and said, "You're lucky, Carol, not having to work overtime." George is a manager and has been really busy lately, working extra hours. Worried about him, I said, "Well, my job is more routine, but you have so much responsibility because you're trusted, George. That's impressive." But my words seemed to upset him. "What do you mean by that? Don't praise me if you don't understand." We've had arguments before, but this was the first time I saw George so tired. Not knowing what else to say, I just said sorry, and George stormed off to his room without finishing dinner. I knew George was tired, so I didn't argue back, but I was surprised by his reaction. I heard his department was starting a new project, so I hoped things would get better once he wasn't so busy. But instead, our relationship got worse over the next few days. A week later, I had to stay late at work unexpectedly. I need to prepare some urgent documents by tomorrow, which might keep me at the office until after George gets back. Feeling a bit uneasy, I decided to text George just in case. I had to do overtime at work today. George, if you're not working late, could you handle dinner? Or should we eat separately tonight? Sorry for any inconvenience. It had been a while since I reached out to George like this. Remembering our last argument, I added sorry to the end of the message. But all I got was a red receipt with no reply. When I got home, George was eating what looked like a meal from a convenience store, and he didn't respond when I said, "I'm home," showing he was in a bad mood. "Sorry about dinner, work kept me longer than expected." Trying to ease the tension, George interrupted me. "Do you think it's okay to work late when I come home this tired? Are you still upset about what I said earlier? Trying to start a fight with good intentions? I was surprised by how quickly things escalated. I asked again, so you think I'm pretending to work late just to bother you, or I'm not finishing my work because I'm lazy? His words stung. I really had to stay late at work. This has happened before, you know. What's gotten into you? I couldn't bear George's accusatory tone any longer. I snapped back. I work hard every day too. I shouldn't have to defend myself against these accusations. But George ignored my words. I'm already stressed from work. I couldn't bear to have this tension at home, especially when I was exhausted myself. My true feelings slipped out, albeit quietly, but George noticed and didn't let it slide. Then just quit your job, he suggested, leaving me speechless. It's ridiculous for you, Carol, who can't even manage housework properly, to be working. After all, I'm the one paying for this apartment. You don't really need the money, do you? His logic seemed completely off base. Feeling my frustration rise, I unintentionally raised my voice. How can you say that? I do take care of the house, and except for the days I work late, I handle everything at home. But lately on weekends, the cleaning hasn't been up to par compared to when we first got married. Seeing dust in the corners of the floor frustrates me. I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I was about to burst into tears. You'd have more time to focus on housework if you quit your job, and it would be easier for you too. I'll even talk to management for you, I replied. I don't think we should be discussing this right now. I decided to pause the conversation to give it some thought. I enjoy my job and don't want to quit, but perhaps if I supported George as a full-time homemaker, we could go back to being the happy couple we used to be. It wouldn't be wise to make such a big decision hastily. Unable to bear the tension at home, I went outside. Realizing I hadn't bought dinner, I decided to bike to the supermarket near the subway station. Riding my bike in the cold night air, I couldn't stop thinking about our conversation. What went wrong? Suddenly, I heard a loud horn honking from behind me and bright headlights approached quickly. Instinctively, I stopped. The next thing I knew, I was lying under bright lights and a white ceiling. Opening my eyes, I saw my parents' faces in front of me, exclaiming, "She's awake." Next to them sat George, his expression unreadable. I couldn't move my arm, and my fingers felt numb. Both of my arms were wrapped in circular casts. "This means you ran a red light on your bike," the doctor explained. I remembered now. I was on my way to the supermarket when the accident happened, but I couldn't recall if the light was red or green when I crossed. The driver was shocked too, but called an ambulance for me. The gravity of what I had done hit me, and I suddenly felt even worse. But why are Mom and Dad here? George was contacted first, and then he informed them. George gave a forced smile to my parents. Understandably, after what had happened, it was awkward for me too. "I'm really glad George was there for you," my parents thanked George, who responded with a polite, "No problem," but his forced smile didn't seem sincere. I ended up spending the night in the hospital due to the lateness of the hour. However, after undergoing various tests the next morning that showed no issues, I was discharged the following day. The doctor instructed me to rest and avoid water-related chores and housework because the casts couldn't be removed. When I got home, which happened to be on my day off, I found George lounging on the sofa with a smug look. "You really messed up running that red light, but now you have no choice but to quit your job," he said without showing any concern. George lay there, staring at me mockingly. I felt powerless to respond, and to be honest, he was right. With casts on both hands, I couldn't even type properly on a computer. Faced with the decision of taking a long break or quitting altogether, I chose to resign, thinking it might improve my relationship with George. But leaving my job didn't magically fix things between us. Instead, it seemed to make him even more dissatisfied. He'd come home just to criticize me, using it as an outlet for his frustrations. During one of my worst days, George surprisingly suggested, "Why don't we go out together? It's been a while." I was suspicious of his sudden change in behavior, but George seemed to be in a good mood that day, and his overtime seemed to be decreasing. Maybe he was finally feeling less stressed. Perhaps today we could finally patch things up. Feeling more hopeful than I had in a long time, I joined George on an outing. We went to the beach, a place we used to visit together. "Here, you can fish in a rowboat," George suggested, pointing to the safe fishing area where beginners could easily fish from rowboats. This spot held special memories for me. Although I had only been here a few times, it was meaningful because George had helped me overcome my fear of the sea by teaching me how to fish. I still remembered the fun times we had here. It's not scary, it's nostalgic, I said to George, who simply replied, yeah. Having a normal conversation without any snark or arguments felt incredibly refreshing and genuinely joyful after so long. After renting a boat, we successfully got on board. Here, Carol, George said, offering his hand to help me aboard, just like old times. I carefully grasped his hand to get into the boat, being extra cautious since I couldn't use my hands to stabilize myself. Sitting down, I was reminded of our dates before we got married, which made me happy. Now we can finally get back to how we were, I thought, hoping this outing could mend our relationship. I looked at George, who then flashed a mischievous grin and kicked the boat off. Huh! I exclaimed, but my voice was drowned out by the sound of the kick. With a sudden jolt, the boat shot out to sea, quickly drifting away from the dock where George stood. Even though I wasn't rowing, George took out his phone and filmed me, laughing and taunting. You better heal that hand fast, or it's going to be bad. In that moment, I realized I had been tricked. I blamed myself. I had thought that if George's workload decreased and I did the housework perfectly, we could reconcile. But I was wrong. This was George's true nature. Realizing this, I felt frustrated, ashamed, and sad, and tears started flowing, sniffling and breathing in the sea breeze. I felt the fear of being alone at sea overwhelm me. I just wanted to go home. As I sat there, eyes closed, trying to push through the fear, a man's voice startled me. Are you okay? You're about to drift out of the safe area, and are those casts on your arms? There was a man, likely a father, and a boy who looked a lot like him, but when our eyes met, the man exclaimed, "Oh, aren't you Carol?" With a gentle voice. I remembered him. He was Matt, George's colleague who had come to our wedding. That meant the boy next to him must be his son, Mark, who had grown a lot since our wedding. I didn't notice. What happened to you in that state? Weren't you in a bicycle accident? Matt asked, clearly confused. Yes, I was, and now I'm stuck here, unable to row, all because George put me on this boat, I explained. Matt seemed taken aback, understandably so. Being put on a boat by one's husband and left adrift at sea sounded like something out of a drama. Let's call for help, Matt said, raising his voice and calling out to the boat rental staff. Thanks to him, I was saved, while Mark played on the beach. Through tears, I told Matt everything about George, how he had treated me, and how I ended up adrift at sea today. Gradually, Matt's face grew pained, and he cried with me. It must have been hard, he said softly, offering a comforting word. I nodded, tears streaming down my face once again. Then Matt made a suggestion. I've been having my own thoughts about George recently. Would you let me handle it? After our conversation, Matt drove me home in his car. During the ride, Mark talked a lot, providing me with a genuinely enjoyable time for the first time in a while. I dreaded coming home, but it was unavoidable. With trepidation, I opened the front door to find George lounging carelessly in the living room. He smirked at me and said, "Wow, you're back. Always lucky with survival, huh?" Unable to find the energy to respond, I ignored him and went straight to my room to get ready for bed. The next morning, I didn't make breakfast for George and stayed in my room. With my hands in this condition, I couldn't cook properly anyway. But even before the boat incident, I had tried so hard to please George, even buying delicious bread. Now, all those efforts felt pointless to me. I didn't give George much thought throughout the day, and before I knew it, night had fallen. The sound of the front door opening signaled an unusually early return for George. He barged into my room and started yelling abruptly, "Hey. It was you, wasn't it?" Confused, I asked what he meant. George's voice grew louder as he accused me. "Don't play dumb with me. You're the one who told my company. What's going on?" I remained unfazed by his words, replying, "I don't know what you're talking about, but whatever trouble you're having at work doesn't involve me anymore. After all, I'm not even working there anymore." I waved off George's accusations, feeling no need to cater to him anymore. Frustrated, George stormed out of the house. The real shock came 3 days later when George, who hadn't returned home during that time, walked through the front door looking as pale as a ghost. "Carol, what should I do?" he muttered, looking lifeless as he shuffled into the room where I was relaxing. "What happened?" I asked. "I've been fired from my job," he said. "Oh really?" I replied indifferently, watching as George collapsed to the floor. I had finally made it to manager. Despite his despair, I felt no sympathy for George because I knew this was coming. This was what Matt had hinted at when he said, "Leave it to me," during our conversation by the sea. According to Matt, George's behavior at work had taken a turn for the worse recently. He was mistreating his subordinates, dumping his work on others, falsely claiming overtime, and even harassing a new female employee, among other things. However, there was no solid proof of his actions, leaving them in a difficult situation. Despite being colleagues who were promoted to manager around the same time from different departments, Matt struggled to come to terms with George's behavior. But seeing how upset I was by George's actions, Matt felt compelled to take action. He suggested I check George's computer, suspecting it held evidence of his wrongdoing since George always took his laptop home. Matt couldn't investigate it himself. I knew George's laptop password. After safely returning from the sea, I pretended to go to sleep, waited for George to fall asleep, then checked and extracted the data from his laptop, which I then sent to Matt. I never expected things to unfold so quickly. Matt, the star of the advertising department, had acted swiftly and decisively. Standing up, I went to my drawer and retrieved something specific. Then, speaking slowly, I said, "I'm sorry to bring this up while you're feeling down, but I have something important to say." George looked at me with a puzzled expression, resembling a discarded puppy. After taking a deep breath, I continued, "I want a divorce." I finally voiced my decision, handing him the filled-out divorce papers. George's face shifted from confusion to a mix of anger and sadness as he looked at me. "Why do you want a divorce? Can't you show a little compassion, especially when I'm feeling so low?" he pleaded. His words left me stunned, almost tempted to throw them right back at him. "I'm grateful to you for revealing your true nature, and I've already discussed this with my family," I stated firmly. This wasn't just bravado. After my ordeal at sea, I had indeed gone back home and talked with my parents. That night, Matt messaged me saying, "George might come crying to you in about 3 days. It's up to you, Carol, what to do next." Reflecting on my options, I decided to confide in my parents. I laid everything out for them, holding nothing back, including the terrifying experience of being adrift at sea in a boat I couldn't row. As I recounted the events, the guilt I had been suppressing and the emotions I had bottled up overwhelmed me, and I cried. My parents, who had held George in high regard, were deeply shocked by what I revealed. However, after hearing my story, they apologized for my pain and encouraged me to proceed with the divorce. Though I had been considering it, their support helped solidify my decision. When I shared my decision with George, he paled and eventually broke down, pleading, "Please don't leave me. I can't bear to lose you now." Despite his desperate plea, my resolve remained firm. "You should have realized before putting me on that boat," I told George. He deflated, sitting motionless on the floor. In the past, I might have comforted him, reassuring him that everything would be okay. But now I felt nothing. My love and feelings for George had long been discarded in the sea along with that fishing boat. "The divorce is final. I won't be your convenience anymore," I declared firmly, my pent-up frustration fueling my words. With that, I left George behind, motionless on the floor. I grabbed a backpack with just a few belongings I had packed the night before and left the house. The night air was cool and I felt refreshingly clear-headed as I made my way back to my parents' home. Despite George's continued pleas to stay together, I proceeded with the divorce through a lawyer recommended by my father. In just a few days, George lost everything, sinking into depression and eventually returning to his parents' house, where even his mother seemed to have lost patience with him. His mother was entirely on my side, repeatedly apologizing for her son's foolishness. I didn't have much affection for George, but I had a soft spot for his mother, which made the situation unfortunate. I've heard he's now unemployed, staying at his parents' home. It's sad to see how he could be so harsh to others yet unable to handle adversity himself. After successfully ending our relationship and receiving support throughout the process, I expressed my gratitude to Matt. Once my arms healed, I returned to work and realized how much I actually enjoyed it. I used to spend each day accommodating George, but now I cherish doing what I love, immersing myself in my work and feeling fulfilled every day. I'm eager to start anew, valuing myself and navigating life with care.